Streets are saying you're not a gamer anymore, little bro. Dude, what do you mean? I'm a gamer. All right, let's blast off. Let's get it twisted. Let's go. Hassan won't read this because he won't recognize my name, but he's helped me tremendously. I'm down 282 pounds from 500 pounds and been playing basketball. Thanks for motive. You lost almost 300 pounds? Oh, no, you're down to 282 pounds. Holy fuck. That is insane, dude. God damn. Respect, chatter. Nice. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. Holy fuck. You're killing it. Keep going, you know? Don't stop. Today we're talking about Trump wants Greenland no matter what. RFK cuts 10,000 workers from health department. Deportations will continue until everyone loves Israel. Astead on. Adam Panetta made a video about your interview with Bernie Sanders. Oh man. Great. My conservative parents have been watching Star Trek Voyager recently and have unironically observed them being less racist and misogynistic. I swear the show is slightly changing them. New York Times is calling for a land invasion of Yemen. Oh my God, they are such freaks. Okay, we'll talk about all of that. Jesus Christ, dude. Okay, Trump wants Greenland no matter what. RFK cuts 10,000 workers from health department. Deportation will continue until everyone loves Israel. Astead in follow-up talking about the feelings of voters 2 months into Burger Reich. Get in now. Did you see the Duolingo reel made exclusively for you? No, I haven't. You know what I have been seeing though? What I have been seeing instead is, at least on my For You page on TikTok, I've started seeing like backlash to the right-wing alpha dog bro life, you know, fitness influencers. I've seen a couple like brolic ass dudes on TikTok who are very clearly like gym content creators who are leftists. And they've been actively talking about how like right-wingers are grifters in this space and you shouldn't be duped by them. And it made me very happy to see that. I followed a guy yesterday called Joe Fit or something, Joe Be Fit, something like that. Anyway, yeah, Trump wants Greenland no matter what. Here it is, blast off. Are you out of MF tank tops? What do you mean? This one?
Fitness is political. Welcome back to everybody's favorite show. We all know a gym bro way too far down the fascist-friendly alt-right.
Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, Joe Be Fit. Yeah, I just started following him. I really like what he had to say. Like, this is good stuff, man. I want to see more of this.
Conservative pipeline. But why? It really all comes down to toxic masculinity. It starts with something simple. Working out, self-improvement, grind culture, harmless stuff, healthy even. But suddenly there's a decline into alt-right messaging. You're hearing about real masculinity, the decline of traditional values and anti-feminism. Despite dedicating so much time to the development of their bodies, gym bros often neglect the development of their minds, rejecting intellectualism. This leads to never-ending conspiracy theories. Anti-vaxxers, carnivore diets, seed oil rejectors. It's all just repackaged far-right propaganda under the guise of health consciousness. And it's particularly damaging to the minds of young men. There's so much focus on individual power that these guys start thinking that doing your own research is better than actual science. And the role models of the industry promote this made-up war against the low-T soy boy beta males. It's an easy trap to fall into, especially if you're isolated, angry, or looking for purpose. If your idea of strength relies on oppression, you're not strong. You're just loud and wrong.
Yep. A real man, a strong man, protects those who have less than them. A real man, a real alpha, a real strong person does not bully those who are weaker than them, does not bully the vulnerable, does not hurt the vulnerable. Okay? And it's really insane to me that the coward's way out for many right-wing content creators is to basically present yourself as above others by actively targeting those who have no defenses. I don't like that. And I think that there is a positive and healthy approach to all of this. And I'm glad that there are content creators who are doing that right now. And you can use it, you can describe it with like simple terms anyway. Yeah, a person of character protects those who cannot protect themselves. I don't know how we became so much more cynical as a society. I don't know how we became so disgusting, where vice signaling is seen as a virtue now, where people unironically feel as though it is virtuous and brave to be a fucking asshole, okay? Stop punching down. Punching down is not alpha behavior. Punching down is not what real men do. When you think about it, even in like movies and whatnot, like think about the characters in movies that are positive figures that are created in fiction and works of fiction. They're not fucking like bullying the weak. It's super basic stuff. It's super, super basic stuff. What are we doing? Adam Carolla subtweet? Wait, what? Adam Carolla subtweet? What did he say? Dude, if you think that I'm subtweeting Adam Carolla, you're delusional. I'm going to be honest with you. I never think about Adam Carolla, and it's awesome. I don't want to ever think about Adam Carolla. Have you considered getting rid of those beard grays? I hear it's really hot right now, and it looks totally natural. Getting rid of those beard grays? No, I have not. Why would I do that? Also, I don't even know how I would do that. What, like dye my beard? That would look ridiculous. No, I'm not. I have not considered getting rid of my beard grays, and I think it's good. The sin of empathy type beat is nuts with religious people. I don't think any just God would think empathy is a sin. Yeah, I'm going to keep my silver fox aesthetic, chatters. It's not going away anytime soon. Get the spray beard, like the spray hairline. Yeah, I'm good, man. Thank you. Yeah. Will you be playing Warzone Verdansk? No, I will not be doing that. And I have no issues with Warzone or anything. I just don't really enjoy playing Warzone. Are you going to be in a maid outfit anytime soon? Not anytime soon. Maybe. I mean, I don't shy away from things like that, as you know. So, and it really pisses off a lot of people. But do you believe this poll? 60% of Republicans, 3 out of 4 Americans, including 60% of Republicans, say the Trump administration's use of Signal group chat to discuss military strikes is a serious problem, according to the first poll out of the national security breach. Yeah, man. I don't care. I don't care, because this is like the least consequential aspect of this. Like, is the takeaway from the Signal group chat story that this administration is incompetent? Sure, that's good. Okay. That's good. That's good that people are becoming more aware of how insanely incompetent and corrupt this administration is, because it's not just incompetence. The reason why they're using Signal is not because they're stupid. It's actually because they're nefarious. It's actually because they're malicious. The reason why they're using Signal is so that they don't have to be subpoenaed on the conversations that they're having. They can delete those conversations, which is illegal. Okay, it's illegal. They don't want records of these combos. That's the problem. That's the reason why they're doing it on Signal. But if the takeaway you have from this Signal conversation is, there's a method to bomb Yemen and they're not doing it right, they should be more secure about their appetite for blowing up Yemen, then that's the wrong takeaway. That is certainly not my takeaway, and I hope that is certainly not your takeaway from this either. So when you have these conversations with other people, remind them of, the larger problems that persist, specifically problems like why are we bombing Yemen? Just like every other previous admin did. Is this appropriate? What are the reasons as to why the Houthis are doing a blockade? Is there any other way that we can stop the Houthi blockade? Yeah. Here is Jeffrey Goldberg's response when Deepa Fernandez asked him on the NPR about the 53 people the U.S. killed in Yemen. I'm glad that some journalists are finally asking these questions. This is good. They should have started with these questions, but it's okay. I'm not going to say too little too late. Deepa Fernandez, there's little talk of the fact that this attack killed 53 people, as we mentioned, including women and children. The civilian toll of these American strikes. Are we burying the lead here? Jeffrey Goldberg says, well, those aren't confirmed numbers. Those are provided by the Houthis and the Houthi health ministry, I guess. So we don't know that for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't know if we're burying the lead, because obviously huge breaches in national security and safety and information, that's a very, very important story, obviously. And one of the reasons, it's a very important story is that the Republicans themselves consider that to be an important story when it's Hillary Clinton doing the deed, right? So that's obviously hugely important. Immediately sidesteps away, brings it back to Hillary Clinton, butter emails, says the Houthi health ministry is giving these numbers so we can't trust them. I love that it's like everything's a terrorist, everyone's a terrorist, every aspect of society is terrorism. And it's crazy because you'll have third-party investigators go back and look at these numbers and find out that they are solid, right? And these numbers, ironically enough, are also utilized by the American State Department. So clearly they don't think that these numbers are actually wrong. Okay? Like in internal memos, the State Department will actively use Hamas-run health ministry numbers, okay? They'll use Houthi-run health ministry numbers. And these numbers are checked by other independent third-party human rights groups regularly. And they're oftentimes an undercount. There's not an instance where there's an overcount. It's an undercount usually. So it's very cool that the meta basically is, no, don't trust them. I don't trust them. They're bad. They're terrorists. Anyway, he then turns around and says, but yeah, I think that covering what's going on in Yemen, the Arab and Iran-backed terrorist organization, the Houthis, that are fighting, firing missiles at Israel and disrupting global shipping and occupy half of Yemen, all kinds of other things in the U.S., you know, and the Trump administration criticizing the Biden's response, and Europe wants Trump to do more. I mean, yeah, there's a huge story in Yemen, but Yemen is, yeah, he's like, we should be talking about Yemen, but not from the aspect of like killing a bunch of fucking children in Yemen, but instead, why aren't we killing more children in Yemen? Look at all the crazy stuff that they're doing. But Yemen is, as you know, is one of the more inaccessible places for Western journalists. So maybe this becomes like a substitute for a discussion for Yemen. I don't know. So the position that Trump, oh yeah, we're going to talk about the deportations in a second, obviously. Yeah, former IDF camp guard Jeffrey Goldberg, obviously. Yeah. These are the liberals that actually love what Trump is doing with Israel, but hate the optics. Doing for Israel, but hate the optics. Many such cases. Twitter is down. Not down for me. I saw people coming after you in Reddit comments regarding the anti-Hamas protests in Gaza. It was pretty dejecting. Wait, what do you mean? In what Reddit? Or what was the perspective? I don't care about Reddit comments. Do not worry yourself with Reddit comments in general. That's crazy. Evet. Niye açma hala? Şişman çünkü. Şişman ama. Şişko. I'm calling Kaya fat in Turkish. Because my mom's like, did you feed Kaya this morning? I'm like, yeah, of course. And I was asking her if she's like still looking for food. And if she is, it's probably because she's a fatty. It's so funny how oblivious he is to all of this. Not only the conflict, but literally not believing the texts were real. Then leaving the group chat. This dude is a fraud and a clown and makes every journalist looks like shit. I mean, that's the reason. This attitude that he has is precisely the reason why Mike Waltz has his freaking phone number. Like, that's the point. Yeah. Twitter is down in most places. Yeah. What is this? Mega cringe? What? I don't know what this is, but I don't care about this. You should do an Irish room where you bring Kaya the groomer. It would do numbers. No. From Ziplocs, White House is using fake Miyazaki AI slop bullshit do propaganda about deportations. Disgusting shit. Oh my God. This is all so wrong. It's so messed up. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about anything. Everything is awful. Virginia Bazora Gonzalez, a previously deported alien felon convicted of fentanyl trafficking, was arrested by ICE Gov in Philadelphia after illegally re-entering the U.S. She wept when taken into custody. 36-year-old citizen of the Dominican Republic has a rap sheet that includes fentanyl trafficking conviction. Fentanyl kills 250K Americans a year, yada, yada, yada. Like, what is this? What is this? What the fuck is this? I don't like that they're just, like, posterizing people that they're arresting without, like, real active new charges associated with it. This is a very nefarious propaganda. And I obviously have talked about the AI, the Miyazaki AI shit yesterday. And one unexamined aspect of the Miyazaki AI thing that I think is like truly damaging, devastating, and ironic in a deep, dark way is this. Hold on, where is it? Someone tweeted about it, and I retweeted it, but I don't know where it is. I retweeted this tweet yesterday night. Oh, irony is dead and all, but it's pretty depressing to see Ghibli AI slop on the timeline, not only because Miyazaki famously thinks AI art is disgusting, but because he spent the last 50 years making art about environmental waste for petty human uses. It's like I covered the Miyazaki approach to artificial intelligence before, where even like a decade ago when he was first being presented with like AI, early forms of AI, he was disgusted by it. He thought we're done. Like, you know, humanity is done. We're robbing ourselves of what makes us human. And he was right. And we are now at that stage. We are becoming less and less human. more and more like bots. This post gave me a tumor, Lamau. The internet is shifting from sterile to soulful. AI is bringing back the richness of handcrafted aesthetics, whether it's Ghibli style, Baroque, or something entirely new. It feels like we're entering the golden age of digital art. Dude, doing this with Miyazaki is so, it has to be deliberate. It has to be deliberate. He is an advocate for famously frame by frame painting, no matter how difficult it is. Okay? We're talking about a guy who is exactly at the opposite of AI art. Like who despises AI art, and now they're just like using, oh God, they're using his art style in this way to do propaganda for this shitty right imperialist nation state in the dumbest, goofiest ways possible. It's just like, it's everything. This dude's gonna kill himself. He's gonna see this and just like end it all. It's also, that's the other side of Miyazaki. He's also a deep, I mean, he's an asshole, but he's also a major anti-imperialist. This is done deliberately. The trigger lives. The right is alting and it's working. I mean, I'm not triggered by it. I'm just disgusted by it. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I don't care if you're making fucking AI art, dude. I don't care. Like, congratulations. You're killing it, okay? I'm glad. I'm glad that you did an input. You're a real artist, okay? What is so frustrating about all of this is that it's awful. And it's not just right wingers doing this too. Liberals have been doing this. Leftists have been doing this. They like the art style, so they think it's dope. I don't think this is exactly right. My guess is that a lot of AI art will be similar to what has happened in the clothing industry. Technology speeds up production, benefiting consumers. Only enthusiasts will care if something is made by hand or not. Yeah. Wait, is Miyazaki a bad person? He's just a very mean guy. Let's just say he is an incredibly mean guy and known to be an asshole. Known to be an asshole. Let's be real. That's like, I mean, he's fantastic. He's a phenomenal artist. His worldview is interesting. Certainly aligned on a lot of stuff, whether it be concern for environmentalism or having deep anti-imperialist attitudes. And he is certainly legendary. And his work in terms of art, yeah, he hates his son. I know, that's the biggest meme. But he is like his respect for art in and of itself is obviously very important. His contributions are very important. And I think this like undermines everything. This undermines his legacy spectacularly. It dilutes the product with like the shittiest version you've ever seen. It's so gross. Yeah. Miyazaki makes cutesy art and has a very dark aura. Junji Ito makes dark art and has a very nice aura. Yeah, here's the 4-second crowd filler clip that took 15 months to make. It has 60 to 70,000 frames, all hand-drawn and painted with watercolor. This 4-second clip, The Wind Rises, took one animator 15 months to do. In the documentary, 10 Years with Hayao Miyazaki, the legendary Japanese filmmaker talks to one of his animators, Eiji Yamamori. After they complete the crowd scene, the exchange is gold. Miyazaki says, "Good job." Yamamori says, "It's so short though." Miyazaki says, "But it was worth it." This right here.
Drawing a crowd takes time and effort, so animators generally avoid it, but not me.
We should probably watch this, actually. Like, I'll be down to watch this. I hear that, like, the NHK org has incredible documentaries. Remember, we talked about this with the Japanese Communist Party? Like, they actually do some really, really solid documentaries. But, yeah. Not right now, of course, because there's, you know, tremendous cruelty that the American government is subjecting the world to and its own citizens to. So
Miyazaki. Everyone gathers once a week to view the rushes. This allows Miyazaki to check the completed shots with his own eyes.
every frame a painting, every frame hand-drawn. It's crazy. Conspiracy talk, Unc? What conspiracy talk? What are you talking about? Why are people saying conspiracy talk?
This shot is only 4 seconds long. It took the team a year and 3 months to complete.
15 months, dude. That shot. Yeah. He's absolutely an imperialist. Wait, what? What do you mean? He's absolutely an imperialist, by the way? Oh, do you mean like pro-Japanese imperialism? Is that what you're talking about? I feel like a lot of his work is unironically against war. I can't speak for his own personal opinions. I don't know his own personal politics, but that would be shocking. Actually, that wouldn't be shocking. He is an asshole. But his work is entirely anti-war and anti-fascist. Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle is an anti-war movie. Like, I don't know I don't know how someone would be. Miyazaki publicly acknowledged the Japanese war crimes. He pushes, wow, it's cool to work. Wait, what? He pushes, wow, it's cool that we work in a cool factory for a glory for our movement. What? I heard he's an Amy Klobuchar stan and he likes charter schools and doesn't mind super fun sites, but okay. I don't know why sometimes I just listen to one random chatter and don't assume that that person is just like being insane, and also forget that like I have opinions on this because I have seen his work. These opinions are not, I didn't arrive at these opinions about Miyazaki's political perspective just on its own. It's from reading his work, from seeing what he has put out there. And it is the diametrical opposite of what this one random chatter is suggesting. But sometimes a chatter will just hit me in a charitable moment, and I'll just go along with it like a fucking dumbass. And this is one of those moments. Sometimes I got to be like, I don't think that's right, and just move on. But nope, can't do that because I'm an idiot, okay? That is my bad. I forget that there are people in here who, have their own worldview that might be a little bit different than mine. And you say you aren't the Joe Rogan of the left. I guess it is a Joe Rogan-ass tendency. Ugh. Yeah, they're going to say Hideo Kojima glorifies war and is pro-Western imperialism next. Being open to new information is a good thing. I know, but there's a level of there's a level of critical thinking that I apply in normal circumstances when I see something that doesn't go along with like what I know. And when a chatter hits me in a really charitable moment, sometimes they dupe me. And this is one of those instances where I should like be a little bit more critical. Only Hassan will get this? I mean, no, I think everyone will get this. What do you mean? Why do you think I would be the only one who gets this? Yeah, Final Fantasy, famously a pro destroying the environment. Dude, it was 60 seconds before you realized? Okay, what are you, fucking timing me? I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm off my game. Very strange that, dog, it took you 60 seconds. Okay, well, I still realized. You're still a dumbass, though. That's what I realized as well. Anyway, okay, I can't stand fucking AI art. I hate it so much. All right, we are getting back to the horrible realities of American empire and the imperialist boomerang turning back upon the American population, being launched against American legal permanent residents, student visa holders, inevitably American citizens. Here it is.
One of the latest people to be detained by federal agents and threatened with deportation is a doctoral student at Tufts University. Surveillance footage shows masked plainclothes officers arresting this student off campus Tuesday in Somerville, Massachusetts. Homeland Security officials accuse her of being pro-Hamas, but her supporters say not so. They believe she's being punished for an op-ed in her student paper. Tom Hansen.
It's crazy. It's actually insane. I know I say this quite a bit, and every day is worse than the one prior, but it truly is. This is truly an incredible erosion of like the last bastion of constitutional law, order. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just Beitar's taking credit for this, by the way. Yeah, it is gross. It's some of the biggest psychopaths, like some of the biggest fucking freaks currently on US soil. Basically the neo-Nazi version of a Jewish advocacy group, which is not even a Jewish advocacy group at all. It's just a anti-Palestinian Islamophobic advocacy group. It's crazy. 2025 was wild, man. We got Jewish Nazis like operating alongside the American government in doing straightforward neo-Nazi shit, black bagging people in broad daylight for a constitutionally protected right that citizens and non-citizens alike have. The notion that you can detain someone and violently, physically remove them from the boundaries of this state for writing an op-ed that says, hey, Israel's doing a genocide. Isn't that crazy? Maybe we shouldn't be like so closely aligned with them, is psychotic. It's insane. And people don't understand. People do not understand that the erosion of free speech and the erosion of due process is permanent, and it will be applied to issues you care about as well. People don't have this understanding. They can't see beyond their noses. They have horse blinders on. They just think like, oh, well, I don't really care about this Israel shit. Who cares? Whatever. Okay, yeah, they're Arab. They're Muslim sounding names. They're Muslims. They're locking up. Great. They don't understand that once those fundamentals are gone, they're gone for you too. Let's say you posted maybe something in favor of Luigi Mangione. You're done. You're out. Let's say you posted, I want healthcare. Let's say you said something like, man, airlines are seemingly offering worse quality service year over year. What the fuck's going on? I hate the airliners or whatever. And then the FBI comes knocking down your door. They're like, what'd you say about the airlines? You terrorist. If they can brand these people terrorists, they can brand you a terrorist. And if there's no due process, you have no way of defending yourself. It's that simple. What the fuck is going on? People don't understand. This is straightforwardly a major erosion of liberal democracy. The last remnants of liberal democracy is gone. Is gone. There is, I can't even really think of like a Western liberal equivalent of this, because people get mad. People get mad about like European restrictions on hate speech and stuff, right? They're like, oh, the Gestapo came knocking down my door because I, fat shamed someone or whatever. They just like grossly exaggerate, right? Like, oh, the German police are coming after me because I'm making fun of a politician. That's ridiculous too, by the way, I think, personally. That's my opinion on it. You know what my opinion on this is. Having said that, the worst they do in that situation is like, you have to cut a check to the government. You got to pay like a $250 fine or some shit. This, on the other hand, you get blackbagged in the middle of the street and you get deported. That's an inherently violent act. They ship your ass to the new Guantanamo. What is this? I sent rape threats to my local leader. What? And now the Gestapo's kicking down my door? Okay, yeah, if you do that, I mean, that's illegal in every circumstance, for the record. That's not the point. Also, what's really interesting about it, though, is that hella chatters come in here and talk about how they want to gun me down on the streets, right? Like, you keep that energy with the wrong person, you're going to fucking jail. You know what I mean? Like, imagine saying that about, I don't know, another person that pissed you off, really fucked you over, not just like a Twitch streamer that you've been taught to hate because I'm an irrelevant person in your life. I'm only as important as you make it out to be in your brain. But like your boss, you say something lightly critical of your boss that makes him fearful, and guess what? Guantanamo Bay for you, bitch. How is that appropriate? How is that good for you? How are you advocating for this system? How do you not see that this is where we are going? Especially because the FBI right now, since the post Luigi Mangione trial, which also is being, Luigi Mangione is also being charged with terrorism, something to take note of, by the way. The FBI, according to Ken Leekenstein's reporting on the matter, have basically become a private security force for the wealthy and CEOs. Ken Klippenstein's reporting on the matter shows FBI becomes rent-a-cops for CEOs. Feds are watching your sarcastic posts online as far as a part of Trump's new war on terrorism. This works hand in hand with what is happening with the anti-Israel protesters. Were they ever not? Not to this degree, chatters, please. Oh my God. Yes, if you do a death threat to a sitting representative, like, yes, you're going to get a Secret Service call. You're going to get an FBI call. That's not the same as this, okay? This is leveled up. They're bragging about it. Dude, Rubio confirmed. Yeah, we're going to talk about the visas thing in a second. Hold on. I just wanted to use this as an example of how this will hurt you as well. Even if you don't care personally about even if you don't care about the situation with the pro-Palestinian protesters because you either hate them because of your opinions or just don't care because you think they're scary Muslims or don't care because you just don't care about the issue at all. Like, this isn't just like you know, this isn't just the government coming after tender-hearted, empathetic people that you think are fucking annoying. Okay? That's the entry point. It's specifically because you don't care, or they bank on you not caring, that they will do this to students with student visas or legal permanent residents so that they can open up the floodgates of oppression and escalate dramatically. This pairs up with that aspect of it. Okay? That's just the entry point. Using that as a precedent-setting moment, using people who are more vulnerable as a precedent-setting moment, will inevitably lead to denaturalizing naturalized citizens, will inevitably lead to denaturalizing and deporting American citizens that were born on U.S. soil. Have you not noticed that this kind of cruelty under Democratic leadership, under Republican leadership, seemingly only moves in one direction? It never moves in the opposite direction. Have you not noticed that? Are we all frogs in a pan and the water is boiling, but it's far too late for us to recognize? Is that what's going on? It sure feels like it. The FBI assessment, heightened threat to chief executive officers following the shooting of a healthcare senior executive, is dated February 19th and is a striking illustration of the new growing domestic war on terrorism that I've been writing about. The assessment and statements from top Trump officials seek to label growing outrage against corporations as terrorism. The Trump administration has particularly spun up about the spate of arson and vandalism attacks against Tesla automobiles and facilities since the CEO became the plenipotentiary to the world's most powerful man. The FBI document was obtained under the FOIA Act, Transparency Nonprofit Property of the People. If the government truly cares about preventing death and suffering, perhaps tax dollars should be spent on healthcare for the people instead of mass surveillance and security for the wealthy executives, Executive Director Ryan Shapiro told me. Part of the FBI's campaign involves monitoring social media posts supposedly threatening corporate executives. The assessment claims that there has been a spike of such threats across multiple industries since Luigi Mangioni's alleged murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December. That month, I reported on a separate NYPD threat report warning that online reactions to Thompson's murder suggest extremists may view Mangione as an example to follow. The new FBI assessments follow the same line of thought, saying this rhetoric has displayed an elevated threat of violence to executives and highlighted a need for increased situational awareness among private sector partners. Social media threats have risen across all sectors and industries, it adds. FBI Director Kash Patel said during his swearing in that the Bureau is going to carry out the world's largest manhunt against anyone who wishes to do harm to our way of life, as I've previously reported. On Monday, Patel announced a crackdown on vandalism directed at Tesla, calling the acts domestic terrorism. You fart on a Tesla, you're a terrorist now. You do January 6th, you're not a terrorist, you're a brave patriot. Fart on a Tesla, terrorist. Okay? Mass shooting, lone wolf. Mass shooting as a white supremacist, lone wolf. Lone wolf, mentally ill. Maybe we should actually release them. Okay? You do a shooting directed at a Black Lives Matter protest, you're a hero, actually, and we pardon you. What do you think is going on? Dumb lib Hassan. Ay, ay, ay. Listen, my entire career is filled to the brim with naysayers that inevitably realize that I was right until it's far too late. This is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to not say, okay, maybe you were wrong or maybe you were right, Hassan, okay? Until it's far too late. You don't want ICE agents knocking down your door or BORTAC units knocking down your door, and that's your moment of realization that things are far too late. Because at that point, no one will be there to save you. There will not be anyone else to save you. Okay? Also, I'm not a liberal. Anyway, despite the new counterterrorism obsession to FBI itself says that anti-corporate rhetoric rarely rises to the level of illegality. Lone actors unaffiliated with specific ideological groups are using social media to intimidate high-profile employees, it says. While these threats are often fall short of federal prosecution, they create fear and highlight the need for heightened vigilance against potential copycat attacks. I'll shoot the CEO of U.S. company before I pay that light bill. One of the examples reads with the company name Con Edison redacted. I searched Twitter and found one post matching those words, belonging to user Static the King. The post had 0 likes and just 1 retweet. The post was not a threat. It was actually a snarky response to an attached video from a user depicting ornate Christmas lights around a large house in Texas. I know that light bill gonna be high, the narrator of the video says. This is not exactly the makings of an anti-CEO pogrom. But FBI intelligence, it would seem, is not big on humor. This is an issue I've often seen when law enforcement relies on automated tools to identify threats based on simply keyword searches. It wasn't the only joke that sailed over the Bureau's head. Another example from the FBI document. On the 10th of December, 2024, a social media user post threatened to kill healthcare CEOs in reference to Thompson's homicide. The post stated, copycat killers identified, and named the CEOs of multiple major U.S. healthcare companies. The poster in this case obviously saying the healthcare CEOs, presumably health insurance companies, are copycat killers because of all the Americans who die due to lack of coverage. But from the FBI's perspective, that doesn't matter. Is everyone here fans of Hassan or... No, plenty of people who are neutral of Hassan, really. Yeah. It's a social media user's post threatened healthcare CEOs in reference to Thompson's homicide. Yeah. What do you mean? Oh, again, it's as if the FBI didn't bother to think through what it was reading and just saw the words copycat killers and jumped to conclusions. Brilliant detective work from our most premier law enforcement agency. This next example is more disturbing and gives a sense of how the FBI is not just spying on our posts, but acting on what they collect. The laid-off employees of a digital music distribution service posted images and messages of their former company CEO, including altered images and references to CEO Thompson's homicide. The description is so vague it's impossible to tell if these posts were clowning on the CEO or making real threats. Even though the posts did not meet the federal prosecution criteria, the FBI didn't stop there, kicking the matter to local law enforcement for further investigation. The assessment reads as follows. As of the 12th of December 2024, following company layoffs, former employees of a digital music distribution service posted images and messages regarding company CEO. The post included altered images and reference to CEO Thompson's homicide. However, the post did not meet the federal prosecution criteria. What's essentially creepy about conflating anti-corporate sentiment with terrorism is that it opens the door to spying on American people. Counterterrorism is literally the business of pre-crime, in which law enforcement and its intelligence arm work to seek to prevent hypothetical crimes of the future, even when no information exists to suggest any preparations. This is the post-9/11 standard that has become the norm when it comes to well-resourced terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, but it should have no place against random shit posters online. Speaking of terrorism and speaking of things that are illegal, I will be interviewing a Cuban doctor tomorrow, straight out of Cuba, as a matter of fact. So we've been working on lining that up to talk specifically about the Marco Rubio statement about how countries that allow Cuban doctors to come and help them out will be considered on a sanctions list, will be sanctioned potentially. So, just to expose the insanity of this current administration, I am once again going to lean into how psychotic they are behaving. What? If you don't consider yourself a liberal, then what do you consider yourself, a centrist? You're more progressive than more liberals? What are you talking about? I'm not a liberal because I am way to the left of liberalism. I think liberals are also somewhat center-right, some of them. Inside of the heart of a liberal, which is the monoculture, exist two wolves. Either one that is waiting to be a radical, a socialist, an anti-capitalist, and many of them have anti-capitalist desires, even if they can't, materialize that, even if they can't comprehend it in and of itself, or a reactionary, depending on how you push people into the direction of recognizing who's doing the harm to you. You can either become a more progressive individual, maybe a leftist, maybe a Marxist, or a person that is deluded into thinking that it's actually the undocumented migrants that is the reason why your, rent keeps going up because, they're your landlord, I guess. Guatemalan migrants are not sitting on the board of BlackRock. Okay, an undocumented migrant is not responsible for your boss telling you have to come into work even though you're sick or even though your immediate family member died and you have to go to the funeral. Okay, that's your fucking boss. That's corporate greed. That is the real harm conductor in American society. But right-wingers will actively move you away from that position. They do a very good job with this. And liberals also refuse to reckon with the real vectors of pain in American society and oftentimes concede to the right-wing framing on the matter. Everybody hates the status quo. The Democratic Party acts like the status quo is not harmful, so they look like out-of-touch assholes, elitist, smug, out-of-touch assholes. Right-wingers, on the other hand, recognize the pain that Americans are experiencing and use that and redirect that pain and anger and resentment towards vulnerable populations, undocumented migrants, trans people, people that are not doing anything to you. This is why we need to refer to ourselves as socialists or Marxists instead of just leftists. It's a heavily abused umbrella term and it confuses the partisans. I don't care. No, I'm not going to do that. This is why I also understand that even someone like Bernie Sanders, who is a democratic socialist and open about that, but still presents himself as like a Nordic style social democrat, is still seen as a radical by the liberal intelligentsia. Okay? So that's why I always say someone like Bernie Sanders is still considered like a part of the left, or Bernie supporters are considered a part of the left, even if they're social democrats themselves. Because in America, you have to figure out where the center is of politics, and it's constantly going more and more to the right. And if that's the case, then yes, you have to pick up allegiances wherever you can. You have to bring forward a broad coalition. That's why while I criticize liberals, I understand that many of them are necessary in this battle against the Trump administration. When did he admit to being a democratic socialist? What are you talking about? His entire career. Don't do this thing where you're like, I didn't know that, but that's on Bernie Sanders. And yes, before people say Bernie Sanders calls the genocide a war, or Bernie Sanders never says Israel and always says Benjamin Netanyahu, you think I don't know that? Half of you learned about what the fuck was going on in Gaza from me. You think I'm oblivious to this? Shut up. I know. Okay? This is quite literally an argument where I'm explaining to people how to build coalitions and how to strike up conversations and instill solidarity amongst people that might not immediately seem like your allies. And you're over here being like, nah, dude, no, you know who you have to go after? The people who are technically the closest to your worldview, even if they're worlds apart, especially in comparison to the rest of Congress. It's stupid, okay? It's stupid, it's unproductive, it's idiotic. And that's why I don't really entertain that noise. I don't really care about that noise. Okay? If it sounds like I'm exaggerating when I say there's a new war on terrorism, like, think about it this way. Why am I talking about anti-corporate sentiment being tracked by the FBI and being regarded as domestic terror on an issue where I'm supposed to be talking about the Department of Homeland Security grabbing people for saying, for lightly criticizing the state of Israel? The reason why I'm doing that is because I understand that the approach necessary for the average person is to somehow figure out a thing that they might be concerned with. Because this notion that like everyone is as locked in as you are and everyone is as understanding as you are about the situation in Gaza, about the genocide, is idiotic. That is not how you widen the umbrella. All you do is just shut it off. Shut the fuck up. Do you understand? I saw a TikTok about this that's quite funny, actually, that I think is very good at quickly identifying the problem. I'm going to show it to you. I reposted
People
it.
from India complaining about British colonialism.
What the fuck is this? Bro failed at history and humanity? Okay, I don't know what bro is saying, but hold on. Let me find the repost real quick. This is the one I was talking.
Educate and reach people on leftist ideologies and socialism and communism. What are you doing? Why would you interview AOC and Bernie? What is wrong with you? I never liked you. I don't even know why you have a platform. You talk a big game on politics and streaming, but you do this? I don't like you. You've always been weird. Infighting is one of the biggest issues the left faces.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. This is it. It's a waste of space. It's a waste of energy. It's silly. It's dumb. I don't entertain it. I also don't mind it necessarily for two reasons. One, why don't I mind it? One, it's good that there is like a healthy dose of criticism. No one is infallible. No one should place me or anyone else as this like deity for socialism, okay? I'm not. I'm a person. I'm a human being. And I'm, of course, imperfect as well. There's plenty of things that I do that are not the best, okay? I'm trying my best, and as long as you recognize that, you can be as charitable as possible. I hope you can be as charitable as possible. Having said that, okay, the other reason why I don't mind it is because more radical voices being out there is not necessarily a bad thing, especially because everyone plays a different role in this process, moving the conversation in the direction that I want it to go to, shifting the Overton window into a conversation that I want it to go to. I forget who it was who said that initially, but I dream of a future where I'm hung from the gallows for being not sufficiently revolutionary, because that means that I have succeeded. That means that, we have moved so far beyond the way that we exist currently within the confines of capitalism. Yes, hanged, not hung. Sorry. Hanged from the gallows for not being sufficiently revolutionary. Okay. Which means that it's over. Like, we're living in the post-capitalist future. We're living in a socialist tomorrow. And people are like, you're doing a lot of fucking, counter-revolutionary behavior, sir. Yeah. Obviously, I don't want to be killed. That would suck, but I'm sorry, record shit's a problem. That's why Elon purposely boosted these criticizing the left from the left accounts that constantly did it leading up to the election. Yeah. Record shit is noise, though. It's background noise. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm a Twitch streamer. Okay? What? You're memeing around the issue that AOC and Bernie are just there to get you to vote for Biden and Hillary and acting like we're only hating Bernie for not trying hard enough. Stop endorsing Democrats that clearly have no interest in actually doing anything. Bernie's history speaks for itself. Chatters that come in here with this attitude refuse to recognize that my position on many issues are far to the left of AOC and Bernie Sanders. They also fail to recognize that in comparison to the rest of Congress, Bernie and AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and many others are infinitely closer to my position than the median Democrat, or God forbid, the median Republican. That's just a fucking rabid, bloodthirsty psychopath. Okay? You have to use the platforms that you have at your disposal. That's it. I'm not failing to recognize they will be parading the next Democrat president. All you dorks adding me will vote for them. Here's the other side of this problem. You are not actually providing any alternatives or any solutions whatsoever. That's the other issue. There is, as it stands, no viable, active third party that can dismantle the Democrat-Republican duopoly. All you're doing is crying. That's it. Okay? That's all you're doing. It's okay. You can cry all you want. Most people are going to go and vote whichever way they see fit, because no matter how much influence you think I have, I don't have that much influence to motivate the masses. You understand me? There's still a tremendous amount of pressure from mainstream outlets, from almost a century of Red Scare propaganda that plays a formative role. Like, I'm just trying to instill class consciousness to the best of my ability and urge others to organize so that we have some mechanism of pushback. And anyone that gives me space to be able to do so, I will take advantage of that. Because unlike you, I do want to actually fucking solve this issue to the best of my ability, at least within my lifetime. I want to move the needle in a direction that will make it easier for the next generation. It's okay if you don't feel that way. We have a difference in methods, okay? I'll go anywhere and everywhere that will have me. And it's fine. It's all right. The criticism is correct. Chatter is correct. Reactions to this are unhelpful. Take a deep breath and steel man the critique instead of flogging the format. The chat moves fast, and not everyone's going to write a doctoral thesis in order to critique a point they think you're wrong on. Calling it all record behavior is tired. Okay, so why did you not listen to me actually respond adequately to what that chatter's criticism was? Is it because you were too horny to type this out instead of listening? Are you incapable of listening actively while also typing out your retort? Because you're responding to something that I already did. I described to you. This is not new. This is not a new criticism. This is not new shit. This has existed in perpetuity for as long as revolutionary feelings have been in the hearts of Americans or all around the world, as a matter of fact. It's funny because we do create some semblance of an echo chamber, which I think leads people into believing that there are a lot of other people out there that feel exactly like you do. There are a lot of people, however, that might feel exactly like you do. You just have to unlock their potential. And you can't do that by just constantly fucking planting your flag, drawing a line in the sand and saying, fuck you. That's it. I did listen. I don't think you're correct. And his response is more unhelpful. You can throw chatters up on the board to embarrass them when they try to make a substantive critique of you, or you can give them the same sincerity you demand people give you. I think me not banning you or that other chatter instantly for relitigating the same exact fucking behaviors over and over again, and instead actively repeating why I'm doing what I'm doing and still saying we might have a disagreement in methods, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but you can try your own method, is the endless amount of charity that you don't even deserve, really. There's 32,000 people in here. We're supposed to be talking about the Department of Homeland Security doing kidnappings, and you want to fucking draw the conversation back to a narrow perspective of revolution that you see fit that has not worked so far, that I don't see you doing anything to instill, okay? What you're doing instead is, with an anonymous Twitch account, yelling at a fucking Twitch streamer who has no motion whatsoever, whose worldview is considered radical and perhaps even terrorism supporting by like every single member of Congress, pretty much. And you think that is your activism. It's not. You're not doing activism at all. I'm giving you charity by not fucking ethering you into the sun. I'm entertaining your perspective, even though I've heard it a million times over. I'm entertaining it because I think you have the capacity to understand where I'm coming from. That's it. That's it. And you're doing this at a time when we need everyone we can get on our side to fucking go out and protest. It's so funny. I do think that the left has a tendency to rip people apart. Like, the left does have a tendency to operate as though this is like some kind of fucking fad. Like, that like socialism is a fad. You know what I mean? Revolutionary sentiment or instilling class consciousness is simply a fad. It needs to be done in the way that you think is appropriate. All right? There's no world where there's any room for a difference in opinion in your perspective. And it's the funniest moment to do this is when every Democrat has completely dropped the ball, okay? And you got 65-year-old Deborahs and Barbaras and in the words of Felix Biederman, Korean war veterans trying to fucking actively decapitate Democrats at town halls, okay? And the only guy that is actually penetrating in this media landscape is a 80-year-old dude who definitely is not aligned with your worldview or mine, especially as it pertains to American foreign policy, but he's still drawing 34,000 people, and it's not even a fucking election season, and you go, that guy that's incredibly popular right now, fuck him. I agree with him on 70% of stuff, and I vehemently disagree on 30%, but you know what? Even though I don't agree with 99% of the rest of the Democrats and 100% of the rest of the Republicans, fuck that guy that I agree with 70% of the way. You're stupid. The goal is to try to get them to understand your position and to redirect all of that, momentum, all that motion into organizing. But instead, you just want to go cut it out. And you have no solutions. This is very frustrating, okay? This is very frustrating. I never said Bernie is infallible, and I agree with everything he said 100% of the way. It's incredibly stupid. This is not a social club. Constant purity testing is the one thing, the constant purity test trap is the one thing I've always avoided, okay? And that is precisely the reason why you can come in here and chirp in a massive community of like-minded individuals that span all the way from baby leftists to radical revolutionaries alike, okay? Without fear that you're, going to get doxxed and hacked by rabid fascists or bullied. You like the bounties of what I try to do. You don't recognize how we got here, and you want the community to selfishly be designed around your individual feelings, designed around all of the things that you think are the right way to do it. You can't do that. You can't this isn't an Applebee's. You can't just like call the manager and be like, sorry, my chicken nuggets were fucking cold. This is an inherently selfish, hyper-individualist American attitude that I see so frequently. Hyper-individualism and American exceptionalism is genuine brain poison, where people unironically look at a situation like this, look at a fucking Twitch stream and a Twitch community, and say, no, you have to change the dynamic. You have to change the dynamic of, you have to change what you believe, and it needs to suit my purpose. Okay? It has to suit the way, you have to operate in the way that I believe is the right way, is the right method. Then you do it. You pave the path. I'll follow you. Okay? That's it. It is narcissism masquerading as revolutionary behavior. Now let's get back to something that every single chatter, for the most part, agrees on. The Department of Homeland Security actively kidnapping American students on student visas, the Fulbright scholar from Tufts University, a Turkish student, for the quote-unquote crime of writing an op-ed in the school paper about reasons to divest from Israel, a genocidal apartheid state.
Has a story.
As federal agents converged on 30-year-old Turkish national Rumeysa Öztürk Tuesday night and wrestled her phone from her hands, the Tufts University...
You literally had a program called Agitprop. Now you're scolding us for trying to do that? That's nasty work. Wait, what? No, I'm not scolding you for trying to do Agitprop. I'm scolding you for being a fucking moron. I'm scolding you for thinking that your version of agitative propaganda is actually better than the agitative propaganda that I've done for this many fucking years that demonstrably has worked, maybe even on you. You're not doing agitative propaganda. You're chirping in a Twitch chat about me not being, not fitting whatever vision you have of me. This is parasocial activity masquerading as revolutionary activism. You're not doing anything. You're just being fucking annoying. That's it. A lot of you have to snap out of it. Really. And you're drawing me back in. You're drawing me back into the conversation. This is not agitative propaganda. What you're doing is just agitating me. That's it. And perhaps many others. Posting is not activism, okay? And I hope, because many people will say, well, I'm a community organizer. I hope you're not fucking organizing your community like this, okay? Stop. Don't do that. You are going to, you keep straw manning. You're just wrong. You got to talk about Bernie and Israel more often. I gave an example of how I tried to approach the subject matter with Bernie Sanders, knowing full well his background on the issue of Israel. He is far more radical than the average congressperson on this matter, and yet he is nowhere near close enough to the position that the American voters should be at, the position that is a moral one, that Israel is an apartheid state that is conducting a genocide. Okay? Now, why did I try to approach subject matter with Bernie Sanders from the framework of First Amendment violations? The reason why I did that is because I know that Bernie Sanders and Dianne Feinstein, rest in peace, Dianne Feinstein, were some of the only Congress members who, even many years prior, were actively talking about First Amendment, egregious violations against the First Amendment by the Israel lobby. The AIPAC-backed bills that had passed at the time on, I don't know, like 20 states, but now is at like 36 states, that made it illegal for someone to retain gainful employment while simultaneously protesting against the state of Israel. The anti-BDS laws. There were only 2 congresspersons, 2 senators only, that actually spoke out against this a decade prior. Dianne Feinstein and Bernie Sanders. So I know that Bernie Sanders, regardless of my disagreements with him on the issue of Israel, does care about the First Amendment. So I tried to Bad Empanada's video is convincing. These shadows are going to be up in here all day for sure. It's hard not to think about, to be honest. I don't know what Bad Empanada's video was, but I love that whenever Bad Empanada does a video, it turns into chatters watching that video and then coming in here and yelling at me instead of doing whatever fucking activism they see fit. This is not activism, okay? I need you to understand that. Not enough time to cover everything in one interview. That's the straw man they're talking about. Wait, what? That is not a straw man. I'm going to fucking lose it. All right, I'm done. I'm not doing it. I'm going to move on. I think this is just like a genuine bait. Okay? Thanks. Okay, well then shut the fuck up, douchebag. What do you mean thanks? Every single time we have conversations like this, I understand why Stalin operated the way he did, by the way. I'm just I'm being so for real. Like, it just immediately I'm like, "Oh, I get it. I see what happened." You would become a fucking paranoid schizophrenic if you had to deal with like a post-revolutionary framework. For sure. I totally understand how the Cultural Revolution happened the way it did. I get it entirely. Like, it would my God, I genuinely cannot believe that we're talking about this right now. It just goes to prove an echo chamber is an echo chamber. Irrelevant of left or right is about how you're expanding the circle and you're speaking to that matters. Is just pathetic to be totally in line with our worldview and exposure of awareness. What the fuck, man? Yes. Yeah. God damn. It is truly alarming how easily people are fucking duped and how easily things turn into parasocial drama. I will say the same thing I say all the time about Bad Empanada. I disagree with him on tactics, and I certainly disagree with him when he does drama coverage, okay? On the issues, for the most part, we are aligned. I hope he doesn't fall into the same slop garbage trap that many other content creators, myself included, have fallen into and sticks to academic framework and, you know, long, well thought out, well researched essays rather than hitting the slop button over and over again. Okay? Especially because this back and forth, this conversation that we're having is entirely unproductive because I'm trying to fucking do the news. You're not in here. This is not just your space. Okay? This is not just your space. It's incredibly selfish. You're undermining what I'm trying to do. I'm going to start banning a lot of you if you keep doing this. I'm sorry, because we have to continue. I want to cover this issue. I want to cover what is fucking going on in America. I want to cover our government behaving as a fascist government. And some of you dumb fucks want to talk about what Bad Empanada had to say. People are getting kidnapped from the streets. Wake the fuck up, okay? Seriously. Incredibly annoying. Especially because a lot of other people that come in here don't have your fucking framework. They don't care. Okay? They don't understand where you're coming from.
A PhD student cried out in distress. Ozturk's attorney says she was on her way to break Ramadan fast with friends when the 6 agents confronted her. They appeared to be in plain clothes, wearing masks, and driving unmarked vehicles, prompting questions from Ozturk and concerned neighbors.
Is this a kidnapping?
In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said Ozturk was detained because she'd, quote, engaged in activities in support of Hamas, adding that her student visa had been terminated. DHS did not provide specifics about those alleged activities. Amid pro-Palestinian protests on campus last year, Ozturk did co-author a 2024 op-ed in the school paper, calling on Tufts to acknowledge the Palestinian genocide and divest from Israel.
Like, it's how do people not see that this is completely insane? This is utterly insane. Like, writing an op-ed on a fucking newspaper is enough for deportation and the revocation of your student visa? Like, what are we fucking talking about? What the hell are we talking about? This is terrifying. The fact that they came in and maybe Bernie will help, right? No, that's great. That's actually what it is. Yes, that is my goal, my hope. This is what I've been saying since I went to the rally and even before. Yes, using all of that momentum that you have to reaffirm that it's not just about showing Trump that he's unpopular, but instead the actual individual policies that this administration is engaging with that are rolling back the last like crumbs of American liberal democracy is not only the smart thing to do, but it actually doubles down on the point that yes, my hope, my goal, I literally just talked to the Washington Post about this. Oh my God. But of course, you guys are fucking children and don't care about anything. You just care about me drama. But yeah, this is the point. This is the point that I'm trying to get across. This is what I want them to do. I want them to use this moment, this opportunity to push, to mobilize against individual actions that the government is taking. Because if they don't do that, then all of this is for nothing.
Peace made no mention of Hamas. Meanwhile, Ozturk's attorney said charges had not been filed against her client, and even though a district judge ordered law enforcement not to move Ozturk outside of Massachusetts without 2 days' notice, DHS confirmed she was being held at an ICE detention facility in Louisiana Wednesday. All prompted hundreds of people to protest near Tufts campus last night.
It's so surreal and heartbreaking.
Rayon Bilge is an assistant professor at Northeastern University. Ozturk was her student in Turkey.
She has never mentioned Hamas, let alone being either anti-Semitic or being anti-anything. These are baseless.
I want to stress the importance of this. By the way, this is why, a couple things. This is why I always say to Western activists to not get, to not think that you can overstep your boundaries. You see a lot of Zionist messaging online where people are actively entertaining death and destruction, saying genocide is happening and we want more of it. It's actually good. If you for even a moment think that as a pro-Palestinian activist, you can say a fraction of that, you are wrong. That's why I always talk about messaging discipline on this regard. Okay? Having said that, even if she was literally being like, I love Hamas, that is not grounds to actually deport someone. That is insane. It is exactly the opposite of what the First Amendment offers in terms of protection to every citizen and non-citizen alike. Do you understand? You should still exercise caution and messaging discipline regardless, as the student protesters did. And even though they did that, they're still coming after these people.
Libelous accusations.
And Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey says she fears this could lead to a chilling effect for international students. I want to read you a quote that she gave. She called it a bad thing for science, research, and the economy if foreign students are afraid to come and study and live here and contribute. Tony.
All right, Tom, thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary, a Turkish student in Boston was detained and handcuffed on the street by plainclothes agents. A year ago, she wrote an opinion piece about the Gaza war. Could you help us understand what the specific action she took led to her visa being revoked?
Yeah,
and what was your State Department's role in that process?
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to...
Okay. First and foremost, participating in protest movements is entirely separate than like vandalizing state property or whatever, okay? Even that is not a high enough bar to clear for deportation. I know that these guys act like they are the standalone deity that picks and chooses if they think it's appropriate. It's not, okay? Deportation is an inherently violent act. The revocation of someone's student visa and the subsequent deportation of a person needs to meet an incredibly high standard. This is why it has to go through the courts. The reason why they don't want to do that is because most judges will go, yeah, we're not doing this. Are you out of your fucking mind? We're not going to deport someone for writing an op-ed. That is a First Amendment violation. Most judges would even say, we're not going to deport a student on a Fulbright scholarship in the United States of America if they were actually breaking state property. I hate how much the boundary has moved. I hate how much the middle ground is so permanently slammed into right-wing fascist thought at this point that people are even entertaining this. Okay? It would be very difficult to judge shop. It would not be impossible, but most judges would not allow, no matter what their background is, even if they're a Bush era judge or even a Trump judge, most judges would not allow a student visa to be revoked and a student to be deported for writing an op-ed. Actually, I would go so far as to say it would be very hard to find a single judge that would be on board with that. Okay? Most judges would not be on board with deporting a student visa for even vandalism. That is insane. That is completely insane. Like, unless a person who has retained a student visa is doing a heinous crime, you're not going to find many judges that are on board with deporting them and revoking their citizenship. This is an act that the government would do for very specific cases. It has to be a heinous crime. It is ridiculous. Delusional arguments? What? Just respond to the point. I don't like that people just go, your arguments are delusional or you're wrong. Just say what you mean and tell me where you got your counter narrative from, okay? It's so dumb to just be like, no, you're wrong. You can't know you're wrong your way out of this. Just explain. What is your non-existent fucking argument? So the position of the Trump-Vance administration and every member of Congress, unless they explicitly say otherwise, is quite literally, you do not have guaranteed free speech rights in America if you can't say things. If you say things they don't like, that is the headline. That is precisely what's going on here. Okay? Speech is not a crime. Speech is not a fucking crime. Until the Supreme Court decides on eroding the First Amendment for non-citizens and then potentially citizens as well, free speech is not a crime. Hate speech in and of itself is not a crime. Hate speech accompanying another crime can be. Hate crimes are separate than hate speech. Okay? If a foreigner came into U.S. soil with a student visa and wrote a piece of paper, and this is not a moral equivalence to anti-Zionist speeches or a demand to divest from Israel at all. I'm talking about something that I consider to be truly abhorrent, morally repugnant, and inherently violent too, like an advocacy for violence. If a foreign student on a student visa came to the United States of America and wrote for Stormfront, you still cannot deport them. Okay? That is literally anti-free speech. That's it. That's crazy. Revoking anyone's legal status and deporting them specifically for what they have written, theoretical arguments, is a terrifying violation of the First Amendment. Just because there's not enough movement against this kind of erosion of constitutional protections, and it's seemingly something that they are doing, that they're following, does not change that reality. And if they do change the laws, then I will fight against that as well. As it stands right now, there's two arguments. There's an argument for the morality. Should we be allowed to deport whoever we want? And the answer is fuck no. Okay? And then there's an argument for the legality. It is currently, as it stands, illegal. That is why they're trying to change the precedent. That is why they're trying to set a precedent to make it legal. Okay? What the White House is trying to do in this situation is completely untested ground, untested territory. They want to open up the faucet of pain, and people are falling. People are genuinely sleepwalking in that direction right now. The Trump administration is goose stepping. The Democrats are either sleepwalking or sheepdogging towards fascism. I am not even remotely being hyperbolic on this. This is not an exaggeration.
We're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple.
Marco Rubio is trying to conflate. Marco Rubio is trying to conflate the standards that are rigid and also shouldn't exist for the record, but the standards that are rigid for giving someone a visa with someone who has already gotten a visa and is inside of the United States boundaries. Citizens and non-citizens alike have a different set of standards when they are entering the United States of America versus once they are inside of the United States of America. Do you understand? If you are an American citizen right now, Customs and Border Patrol, according to TikTok, I see so many TikToks on this, and according to immigration lawyers as well, are even searching and violating the Fourth Amendment rights of even American citizens. Because right before you enter the United States border, you have a different set of standards. Just like there's a different set of standards for who the American government chooses to give a visa to versus how they can remove that visa. Okay? Just like there's a different set of standards between coming into the country versus once you have passed the boundary, once you are inside of the country. That's it. You cannot conflate the two.
I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved.
Are you not scared that ICE comes for you and your family? No, because I'm an American citizen and so is my family. Now, the problem here is if BORTAC was coming after me, or because they're, it's a constitutional free zone. Los Angeles is, many parts of the country is. Okay? What you need to understand is if the American government has already moved beyond students and are now going after American citizens, if they're going after American citizens, like natural born U.S. citizens like myself, we've already moved so far beyond the problem that I'm trying to explain here to many others. Okay? We've moved past that. Like if there is like a permission structure of who you can target right now to open up the floodgates, to open up the floodgates of harm and to start blackbagging anyone and everyone that you consider a political dissident, Erdogan style, right? It starts with legal permanent residents. It starts with undocumented migrants. Then it starts with documented migrants that have visas. And then it moves on to legal permanent residents with green cards. Then it moves on to recently naturalized citizens that you can denaturalize. Then it moves on to natural born U.S. citizens. And then it moves on to natural born U.S. citizens who also have the legal means and the financial means to defend themselves. I'm here, okay? If we got here, it's over for virtually everyone in this chat. Okay, I'm here. I'm on the last stage. That's why I don't like to talk about this too much. I don't want to, center the conversation around myself and my fears or whatever the fuck, because that doesn't shake my integrity. And more importantly than that, beyond the fact that does not shake my integrity, that doesn't stop me from saying what I'm saying, and it shouldn't stop you either, okay? Because we still at this stage have fucking rights. It also means it's far too late. They're going after some of the least protected people while trying to conflate like pre-existing rules for different aspects, like and trying to retroactively apply standards that don't exist. That's the reason why they're going after student visa holders. And that's the reason why they went after Mahmoud Khalil. They didn't go after Mahmoud Khalil because he had a green card. They went after Mahmoud Khalil because they thought he was on a student visa. But when they found that Mahmoud Khalil actually had a green card, they just kind of kept going along with it. But the first round of deportations was always going to be student visa holders. That is how you set a new precedent. Revocation of student visas and subsequent deportation for no crimes whatsoever other than a direct First Amendment protected, constitutionally protected exercise of free speech. Once you set the new precedent that you can go after people and that free speech doesn't matter for non-citizens, and once you set the precedent that due process doesn't matter because these things, the deportations work side by side, and it's not like this is something that they're hiding. Nayib Bukele has literally said he would entertain the notion of having American citizens in the El Salvador CICOT prison as well, the slave labor camp. Once they erode the constitutional protections by entering the argument with, oh, well, these guys are terrorists, they're Hamas, okay? They will use it on newer targets. They will expand. They will expand into new territory. You sound nervous, pal? Again, I'm not gonna repeat the point again, but brother, if you think that your life will improve if this government deports me or revokes my citizenship, you are a delusional moron. By the time the government gets to someone like myself, for deportation, you will have already been fucking melted for biomatter. Okay? Understand that you are nothing. Why would I even care about that? What do you mean? Well, the entire reason why I'm talking about this stuff is so you understand the horrible things that are to come. I'm warning you. Are you really against CICOT? It holds the most inhumane gang members that terrorize citizens? Yes, I am. Do you want to know why I am? Because there's no fucking due process. Read any human rights report on CICOT and you will quickly understand that not every single person that is trapped in those prisons are actually fucking MS-13 gang members. They literally round people up and then do not afford them a trial or a day in court, 800 people at a time. They go boom, boom, boom. You're a terrorist. You're MS-13. And then they put them in this permanent slave labor camp. Yeah. Also, no matter how violent someone is, no matter how inhumane or how big of a terrorist someone is, you still shouldn't be able to torture them. What are we talking about? This is what I mean. The Overton window is so fucking right wing. The Overton window is so slammed to the right that we're just like talking about it where it's like, well, you know, those guys are terrorists, dude. We should be able to torture them. We should be able to do whatever we want to them. It's like, what are you saying? No, of course not. No. I feel like 30 years ago, if you were to say something like that, people would be like, I don't know about that. Even in America, there were protests against Guantanamo Bay. There were protests against enhanced interrogation. The very fact that this became a legal case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court implies that there was enough people that were criticizing the Bush administration for doing torture. The very fact that they had to create a legal process where they didn't call it torture but called it enhanced interrogation implies that there was people going, that's not allowed. What are you doing? You can't do that. Once you set the precedent, it's over, and then you move on to the next stage. This is precisely what I'm talking about. Administrations prior to this that either accelerated this process in terms of warrantless arrests, in terms of black bagging people, sending them to Gitmo, in terms of like warrantless surveillance, like mass surveillance in the American security apparatus, all of these administrations moved the needle into this direction so that the Trump administration could create this process and that a lot of Americans would not look at this and go, the basic human rights for some people? No, thank you. I don't care about it. This is where we're at now. It is terrifying. People read history books and don't even entertain the notion that it can happen here or it is happening right now. What? So you and the human rights advocates are against it, but the majority of the citizens that now have one of the safest countries aren't? I don't know, seems contrarian. Okay, dude. The majority of Germans thought that like it was good that the Jews were being fucking sent to concentration camps. Did that make it appropriate or okay? Or do we now have the benefit of hindsight to look back at that and go, maybe that wasn't the best idea? The fuck are you talking about? One of the safest countries. God damn, dude. How do you not understand that MS-13 is a fucking violent gang, okay? Having said that, basically El Salvador and the government under Nayib Bukele turned into another gang. That's what they're doing. They're doing MS-13 shit. No, he's not talking. This chatter is not talking about America when he says one of the safest countries. He's talking about El Salvador. Okay? And I don't think it's safe if the police can just come and black bag you under the suspicion that you're MS-13 aligned. Okay? And then you and 800 other people that they've kidnapped are sitting in front of a judge who's wearing a fucking balaclava and decides that all 800 of you are fucking MS-13 members. They make you, they disappear you. This is shit that you see in the fucking movies. This is shit that you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe how fascist and authoritarian this place is. No, there needs to be a process. There needs to be a process. The reason why the police are supposed to be treated differently than a gang, or governments are supposed to be treated differently than a fucking violent criminal gang, is because of rules and laws and standards that are supposed to apply unconditionally to every single person. Okay? If you just operate a slave labor camp and black bag random people, now you're MS-13, or maybe even worse than MS-13, as a matter of fact. What are you talking about? You've become the criminal at that point. It's just common sense. You are delusional. Were the Jews gang members murdering people? Are you out of your mind? You are delusional. Were the Jews gang members murdering people? Wait, what? Do you think the gay hairdresser is actually a terrorist, or was he sent to El Salvador simply because he is brown? Was the soccer coach murdering people? No. Do you think the Nazis were just like, oh, Jews are actually wonderful and that's why we're sending them to concentration camps? No, dumbass. They dehumanized them and lied about Jews. They dehumanized and lied about them until other dumb fucks like you believed it. There's got to be a reason for it, right? This is how it works. They change the laws. Criminals will go to jail. Yeah, being Jewish was a crime in Nazi Germany. That's my point. The fuck? The same process of denaturalization took place there too. Jews were not seen as like real Germans. They were just non-Germans. The parallel is right in front of you. It's so shocking that you just can't understand it. So some MS-13 members shouldn't be in prison? No, that's not what I'm saying, you fucking morons. Oh my God. No, I'm saying that a shit ton of people that are put in torture prison right now in El Salvador, the CICOP prison, are not actually MS-13, but there's no process where you can verify that because they don't give a fuck. They just nab you off the street, they kidnap you, and they say, all right, you're MS-13 now, fuck you. How is this difficult to comprehend? And the American government is sending people without any evidence whatsoever. Like, guys, I need you to understand something, okay? The Holocaust, when it was happening, was legal, okay? When it was happening, when the German government was doing it, they literally did it legally. Slavery was legal. Abolishing slavery was illegal, okay? Freeing slaves, illegal. Slavery, legal. Holocaust, legal. Freeing concentration camps, illegal, okay? Sheltering Jews, illegal. Understand that just because something is legal, just because a government says someone is illegal or is doing a crime doesn't mean that they actually did the crime, okay? You need to understand this. You're totally right, but they weren't deported and executed for being Jewish initially. They were slandered as traitors and criminals until it was implicit to their understanding of Jewish people. Yes, no, that's why I said it didn't start off that way. It started off with dehumanization. Yes, and that dehumanization is happening here for non-citizens in real time. That dehumanization is happening right now in real time in the United States of America for non-citizens, okay? For documented and undocumented non-citizens alike. El Salvador has also taken an old-fashioned playbook page out by using a very real epidemic of gang violence that was making the lives of their people a living hell. Now that they quashed the main problem, they have and will use the gang excuse forever to strong arm and overreach with impunity. It's not creative, but it will always work as long as there are people like these chatters around. Exactly. I'm going to give you two examples of some of the recent people that this administration has decided to deport to the CCOT slave labor camp. Okay, two examples. I briefly mentioned it. Hold on, where is it? And I'm going to talk about the Tufts student as well in a second. But here's the story of one of the men Kristi Noem sent there, a guy whose autism awareness tattoo got him interrogated by ICE officers who, despite an agent telling him he was clean, detained him and shipped him to this hellhole. This is from Aaron Reichlin Melnick, senior fellow at IMM Council, American Immigration Council. Okay? This is what happens when you abandon due process. Neri Alvarado with his brother Nellierson in 2023. Alvarado told Hernandez that an ICE agent had asked him if he knew why he had been picked up. Alvarado said he did not. Well, you're here because of your tattoos, the ICE agent said. According to Hernandez, we're finding and questioning everyone who has tattoos. The agent then asked Alvarado to explain his tattoos and for permission to review his phone for any evidence of gang activity. You're clean, the ICE officer told Alvarado after he complied, according to both Hernandez and Maria Alvarado. I'm going to put down here that you have nothing to do with Trendaragua. For reasons that remain unclear, Hernandez said that another official in ICE Dallas field office decided to keep Alvarado detained. This was his autism awareness tattoo. Hernandez, a U.S. citizen who moved to the United States from Venezuela nearly 3 decades ago, searched desperately for Alvarado when he didn't show up in his home country that weekend. He was nearly certain that Alvarado was in El Salvador when he first spoke to Mother Jones on Thursday. I have very few friends, he said. Very few friends, and I've been in this country for 27 years. I let Neri into my house because he's a stand-up guy, because you can tell when someone is good or bad. Later that day, on Alvarado's 25th birthday, Hernandez got confirmation that his friend was in El Salvador when CBS News published a list of 238 people now at CCOT. There's more to it. It doesn't end there. That's who you think should be sent to this slave labor camp. Okay? That's what you are advocating for. Do you think it's appropriate? Do you think this is right? Do you think we're actually making this country better? Another person that they did this to was a soccer coach. Another person that they did this to was a gay hairstylist and makeup artist. There are people with legal permanent residency status. There are people with proper documentation. There was a guy that they arrested, detained, and shipped out to El Salvador for having a Real Madrid-inspired tattoo that they claimed was Trendaragua. One of the other examples that they offered, the Department of Homeland Security itself offered these examples, was that he was doing this in a photo. Literally this. They said this was a gang sign. If they had real evidence that these people were monstrous criminals, they wouldn't have to violate due process. You understand? They know that they don't have any evidence. They don't want to have any evidence. They want to be able to do this expeditiously without any evidence whatsoever, without due process, because the entire purpose is to erode due process so they can do this to anyone and everyone they see fit. And if you can't comprehend why due process protects you, I don't know what to tell you. When there's no due process, that means, let's say you don't have your fucking license on you. You get stopped. You get apprehended. You have no way of proving your innocence. You have no way of proving your citizenship. Before you know it, you're shipped off in chains to El Salvador. That is the reason why due process matters. Do you understand? I mean, this is it. Yeah. Consider this. 6 people in plain clothes approach you, and then people go, I'd ask why and listen to the reason. It's probably a good one, or they wouldn't have grabbed me. I don't think people understand. How devastating this is and how this will inevitably hurt them. I don't know. People who think, no, I'll just follow the rules, lol, don't recognize that these are all people that were following the rules. We're talking about them right now. None of the people that have so far had their citizenship or had not their citizenship, sorry, their legal status revoked have broken any rules. That's the entire reason why this is a precedent-setting moment, okay? They are disappearing people and actively saying, we're doing this for no reason, and what are you going to fucking do about it? People literally need to relearn the basics, like how Adolf Hitler rose to power. Yeah, maybe. He's openly saying it, by the way. He's saying, like, there's no, I can do it for any reason I want.
Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home...
Yeah, except this country also has additional restrictions on what the government can and can't do, and you're trying to violate those restrictions. That's what the Constitution is supposed to do. Rules and regulations restrict regular citizens from behaving in ways that they want to, right? Because it might mean instability if people were just out doing what the government has decided is a crime. On the other hand, the United States Constitution is supposed to restrict the United States government. The United States government from behaving in ways that could harm you. Okay? As long as it's fucking reasonable. The Constitution protects citizens, not illegals, non-citizens. No, that's not correct. You're wrong. The Constitution does protect non-citizens. How do I have this conversation with people who are too stupid to understand this? It does. You wanted to not protect illegals and you wanted to not protect them, but currently it does. And I think that's a good thing. Yes, the Constitution protects every human being on U.S. soil, documented and undocumented, citizens and non-citizens alike. Otherwise, you could just fucking kill tourists. You know what I mean? You could do whatever you want. It's like, hey, oh, are you a tourist? Are you here on a tourist visa? Come here, I'm going to fucking torture you. Like, what are you talking about? Can you imagine? I guess that's where we're moving towards. And these dumbasses want that to happen. Oh, tell me where you got this information for. Show me where it says in the Constitution that says non-citizen. It says person on U.S. soil. Persons on U.S. soil. Persons. You can imagine and envision that non-citizens are not persons, but they are, okay? It doesn't say American citizens only. Eventually, the Supreme Court extended these constitutional protections to all aliens within the United States, including those who had entered unlawfully, declaring that aliens who have once passed through our gates, even illegally, may be expelled only after proceedings conforming to traditional standards of fairness encompassed in the due process of law. The court reasoned that aliens physically present in the United States, regardless of their legal status, are recognized as persons, guaranteed due process of the law by the 5th and 14th Amendments. Thus, the court determined, even one whose presence in this country is unlawful, involuntary, or transitory is entitled to that constitutional protection. Accordingly, notwithstanding Congress's indisputably broad power to regulate immigration, fundamental due process requirements notably constrain that power with respect to aliens within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Don't poop on me too hard. I'm French Canadian. Just looked it up. You're correct. My bad. That conversation that took place right there, I know the last paragraph, chatter. I'm going to get to it in a second. That conversation that took place right there is basically what every conversation with a conservative, no matter what nationality, ethnicity, background, age group, no matter what demographic or psychographic profile they have, as long as they are conservative, is the exact same conversation. If you have conservative people in your lives that you have talked to, you've already had this exact same moment where you just go, you're wrong. Here, let me explain it to you. At least that guy, ironically enough, being French Canadian, was like, okay, I was wrong. Most people don't even care that they're wrong. They just go, nope, they move on, do something different. Okay, they just move on to something different. They just go, all right, well, I still think they should die. Like, depending on how reactionary they are. That's why I didn't permanently ban him, only gave him a week off. Wait, isn't this the guy? Did I not give him a week off? No, this is a separate person. Yeah, no, they got a week off. Oh. Incredible.
Because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner. And I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen. I bet you're going to kick me out. Well, we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
This morning, a Tufts University graduate student is waking up in a detention facility in Louisiana. She was arrested by federal agents outside an off-campus apartment on Tuesday in Boston, and security video shows the moment that she was taken into custody by federal agents. Her name is Rumeysa Öztürk. She's from Turkey, a Fulbright scholar and a PhD student. Her attorney says she has a valid visa.
So I also want to talk about this aspect of it. Where is it? Martha Lincoln, associate professor at SFSU, wrote this thing that I thought was pretty interesting as well, because I also ironically applied for a Fulbright scholarship back in the day. I think I applied for Anne. I don't know where she is. I remember like visiting the Fulbright offices and talking to them about it back in the day. I didn't get it. But Fulbright as a scholarship is about like promoting, liberal values, ironically enough. And I think that's why it's like additionally horrifying, and there is this dark irony captured here. If this happened to an American student who wrote an op-ed while on Fulbright in Turkey, it would be an international incident. Congresspeople would demand the student be returned within the hour. Their intellectual, professional, and political and personal integrity would be defended. The student's cause would likely be further used to sanction and shame the Turkish government. It would be held up as evidence of the enduring American values of independence, freedom, and liberal democracy. The student would be treated as a standard bearer for those values. Fulbright would put out statements. The U.S. Embassy would put out statements. The White House would put out statements. The student would be out of Turkish custody very quickly and put on a plane home with a U.S. official. There would be huge ripple effects in Turkish-U.S. relations. But it's the other way around. Unfortunately for this talented, gentle, and principled young woman, an expert on child development and children's media, no one powerful pointing out how her treatment violates the liberties upheld by the United States and valorized by Fulbright. Öztürk's detention is especially sadly ironic because Fulbright is intended to be ambassadorial. Participants promote the supposed cultural and political values of the U.S. By expressing her convictions in an opinion essay, Öztürk was doing what a model Fulbrighter should. Even the most staid State Department functionary should be able to see the irony of a young Turkish PhD student being the one to teach Americans about freedom of speech and opinion. But in their absence, illustrated by her forcible extrajudicial detention for writing an essay. It's so crazy. I would like to take the moment to apologize for my ignorance. It was pretty dumb. Thank you, Hassan, for doing what you do. Okay, I don't even know what you said. I don't remember. It's already in the rear view mirror. But thank you for apologizing. I accept. Yes, I already covered this. Turkey closely monitoring the detention of Tufts students Rumeysa Öztürk. The Turkish embassy in Washington is closely monitoring the detention of Rumeysa Öztürk. The Turkish embassy is too busy, or the Turkish government is too busy destroying protesters in its own country right now, which is precisely the reason why they don't have time for this, for the record. Be deeply ironic if the Turkey government turned around and was like, how dare you do this, while they're literally doing this to its own citizens at the moment in Turkey at a rapid clip, for the record. So there's no solution to any of this. If everywhere is awful, what the fuck do you do? Who do you go to? Vatandaşımız about the Turkish government saying this point of how dare you actually detain for simply expressing an opinion is not lost on me, especially considering that the Turkish government is doing just that right now, every single day. BBC correspondent Mark Lowen deported from Turkey after reporting on the protests over arrest of Istanbul mayor. And for the record, I need I need people that come in here and go, whoa, it's okay when Turkey's doing it. It's not okay when Turkey's doing it. It is completely unacceptable. That's my point. My point is, ironically enough, I watched the erosion of certain liberties under the 22 plus years of Recep Tayyip Erdogan And then now I come to America in the time frame and I'm watching America also fucking fall apart, turkifying at an alarming rate, jokingly enough. I mean, obviously this is inherently a very American thing to do, this kind of fascist shit, but still, you are cursed. Thanks, Hassan. Okay, everybody, calm down. Don't do that. Judge orders the Trump administration to preserve signal messages from March 11th to the 15th. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they hit him on this. Oh, hold on. Let me finish the rest of it because, of course, the Supreme Court will still add qualifications, okay? Despite the fact that the constitutional protections extend to all aliens on U.S. soil, regardless of immigration status, okay? The Supreme Court has also suggested the extent of due process protection may vary depending on the alien's status and circumstance. In various opinions, the court has suggested that at least some of the constitutional protections to which an alien is entitled may turn upon whether the alien has been admitted into the United States or developed substantial ties to this country. Thus, while the court has recognized that due process considerations may constrain the federal government's exercise of its immigration power, there is some uncertainty regarding the extent to which these constraints apply with regards to aliens within the United States. This is part of the reason why, for example, border apprehensions done by Customs and Border Patrol can lead to immediate deportation. Okay? In that process, they still go through some set of legal standards, okay, to see if there is a legal claim to asylum or whatnot. But it's a more expeditious process as opposed to an undocumented migrant or a documented migrant, a documented non-citizen living on U.S. soil for, 10 years, 15 years. We all know that you are Kurdish and hating on Turks and the Turkish government. Good one, chatter. Haven't heard that one in a while. It's so funny to be like, yeah, you're Kurdish, hating on the Turkish government. It's like, dude, the Turkish government is arresting people for literally protesting after they arrested the opposition leader and many people that they claimed was aligned with the opposition leader for no reason whatsoever, just claiming corruption, claiming terrorism, like in America. And you're over here being like, yeah, you know who's actually fucking me over? The Kurds. When have the Kurds done that to you? Anyway, let's continue.
But the school now says they were told her visa status has been terminated. DHS says she, quote, engaged in activities in support of Hamas, and her attorney calls those claims wild accusations. Last year, she co-authored an op-ed in the school's newspaper criticizing Tufts' response to the pro-Palestinian movement. CNN's John Miller is here with much more on this, and there seems to be much more to learn about this. First, on the arrest, what do you see in that video, John?
Well, the first thing you notice is you've got 6 agents approaching her, and when they make contact with her, they all pull up face masks. That is unusual in American law enforcement when they're acting lawfully and properly. Some tactical teams do it, but this is a routine arrest.
Then also, what are you hearing? I mean, I read one quote that they've not said publicly, DHS, in terms of a spokesperson, given a lot of detail quite yet, just the one that I read there. What are you hearing from Homeland Security officials?
Well, first, they're defending the use of masks by agents making these arrests. They say, when our heroic law enforcement officers conduct operations, they clearly identify themselves as police while wearing masks to protect themselves from being targeted by known and suspected terrorist sympathizers. Now that sounds a little hyperbolic. What they're probably talking about is demonstrators and protesters have had a habit of
Like, this language is not appropriate for the moment, not to do like tone policing or whatever, but there is no reason to hand it to them, okay? There's no reason to be like, oh, well, I guess they're being a little hyperbolic. Like, I understand. I mean, it's scary. These are like fucking weird brown Muslim people. I mean, the Turkish woman is hijabi. They're doing pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Some of them are terrorists. Like, yeah, it's not a little hyperbolic. It's a completely ridiculous. It is a completely ridiculous reason. And they're not even hiding the fact that there is no real reason beyond First Amendment protected free speech. This is the reason why I think there aren't more people freaking the fuck out about this, for the record. These are the people who are sheepdogging towards fascism. The Trump administration is goose-stepping. these guys are sheepdogging, and the rest of the public is sleepwalking. How else are they supposed to be informed when some of the most egregious, overwhelming violations of First Amendment rights, violations of due process are being reported on like it's just, they maybe got a little bit out of hand here. Our brave law enforcement officers were doing a routine, ordinary stop. No, that's not what happened. What are you talking about?
Agents that they could identify, harassing them online or at home. Still, the rub here is these students so far have not been charged with a crime of supporting a terrorist organization. They've been charged with what for anybody who was not here on a visa.
Dude. Even if they said, even if they claimed, this is the other side of this that freaks me out, because they're going to start claiming that people are supporting terrorism, and these guys are going to be like, well, I guess it's okay since they were supporting terrorism. Like, what are you talking about?
Would have been 100% constitutionally protected protest activities. And this is going to be the rub in these discussions, which is when these things get to court, if being here as a student is a privilege, and it is on that visa, do you lose constitutional rights that would be available to anybody else who is here?
Is it clear what is next then in this case?
Well, it's hard to say because the first thing they do is take them into custody. They don't notify them that you have a hearing and we're going to litigate this. The second thing they do is they send them to Louisiana, which puts them far away from their legal representation and makes it hard to stay in touch. So the question is, will they be out of the country or will this get to court first? But we're going to have to watch how this is going to play out because it's going to dictate, how the future is going to go for these other cases.
That's exactly right. John, thanks so much. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
This morning, the Turkish government says it's closely watching the case of Rumeysa Öztürk, a Turkish national and graduate student at Tufts University, who was detained outside her home this week. The Department of Homeland Security says she, quote, engaged in activities in support of Hamas, but has yet to specify what those activities were. Her attorney says she has not been charged with a crime. CNN senior legal analyst and former assistant U.S. Attorney Ellie Honig is joining us right now. So, Ellie, what law is the Department of Homeland Security relying on in this case?
Well, Wolf, we don't know the answer to that exactly, and here's why. If this was a criminal case, and as you said, it's not, but if it was, there would be a public indictment, and that would tell us exactly what law was at issue here. It would tell us exactly what the alleged who, what, when, where of it was. But instead, we are in the immigration context. Now, it appears, based on DHS's public statements, that they're relying on a 1952 immigration law that gives the Secretary of State very broad discretion to designate a non-citizen, including a visa holder like here, as a potential threat to U.S. national security. They've invoked this law in other similar cases. It has rarely been used over the 70-plus years of its existence, but it looks like under the new Trump administration, DHS is relying on this law more and more frequently.
So, Ellie, what legal arguments do you expect Öztürk's lawyer to use to challenge all of this?
So I think we should look for two arguments. The first argument is that the law itself cannot give the Secretary of State unilateral authority to simply declare someone a security threat and
I need people to understand something, okay? They're going after easier targets first. They're going after student visas. First, they separate non-citizens and citizens, right? Like natural born and naturalized citizens from documented non-citizens and undocumented non-citizens. Once they revoke constitutional protections to documented non-citizens and revoke due process to documented non-citizens, they will, after they're done, doing mass deportations and driving people to slave labor camps in El Salvador, they will then move towards citizens. They will start the process of denaturalization. This is how it works, okay? And the way that they will jump from non-citizen to citizens is by suspecting someone of being a non-citizen. Once the population is perfectly on board, or enough of the population is like, yeah, this is fine. I mean, I guess like it's not hurting me or whatever. They will start, because there's no due process, they will start rounding up citizens as well. But because there's no due process, you can't fight back against it. They'll hold that up in the courts and try to stop that process of deportation for citizens and the revocation of people's citizenship. And the argument that they will apply in this process will be the exact same. You are a threat to America because we have declared you a terrorist. All the while, they will claim that terrorism is a vague standard that is applicable to more and more people. Vandalizing a Tesla, you're a terrorist. You said fuck you to your CEO, you're a terrorist. You hurt Trump's feelings, you're a terrorist. That's it. Once the First Amendment standard is eroded, it won't stop just at non-citizens. Once the due process standard is eroded, it won't stop at non-citizens, and it doesn't even have to stop at non-citizens. It will come for you as well. From rare to routine, denaturalizations expected to soar under Trump. Cases spike 600% as the DOJ's new task force investigates 700,000 naturalized citizens' files. This is not only a costly endeavor, but they are moving in this direction already. The Trump administration has intensified efforts to denaturalize immigrants who have obtained U.S. citizenship, a move that has sparked controversy among lawmakers and immigration advocates. The administration argues that these efforts protect the integrity of American citizenship, while critics warn of their potential constitutional violations and political targeting. The expansion of denaturalization proceedings marks a dramatic shift from historical norms. Previously, the revocation of citizenship was pursued only in the case of fraud or national security threats. However, under Trump, the Department of Justice ramped up investigations, leading to substantial increase in the number of cases reviewed for possible denaturalization. I am not a naturalized U.S. citizen. I'm a natural-born U.S. citizen. That's why I say I'm at the last stage of this process. I was born in the United States of America. I have citizenship. It's a little bit different. So that's why I say by the time they get to me, it's over for all of you. Anyway.
You're good about it as an immigrant? You feel your citizenship secure?
Yeah, no, I don't
citizenship
care.
secure?
I don't care. Let's
You got
bring
plan
it
B?
on.
You got a plan B?
I don't have a plan B.
Every brown person has a plan B.
I
You're
don't.
rich enough not to need a plan B.
Rich enough? Hey, you're the one with the merch.
But I have plan
You're
B.
the one with the merch,
But I-
man.
but I have
I don't have a merch saying
But I have-
Basim Yusuf.
But I have plan B, C, and D.
You do?
You have plan A in California. That's it.
Yeah, I can't leave California.
You've been a citizen for over 5 years, so I think you're good.
Yes.
Basically, apparently, this is what the lawyers tell me. If you have been a citizen for 5 years or more, it becomes much harder for Stephen Miller to strip you of citizenship. You know, they have a denaturalization commission now, a group that will look at American citizens and say, we think you're actually an illegal immigrant, and they strip you in retrospectively of your citizenship. Apparently, that becomes harder after 5 years. So I think you're okay.
Yes.
You're a little bit safe.
I just got my 5 years in last December, just last month.
There you go. So you got your 5 years.
5 years, baby.
How do you feel, no, genuinely though, how do you feel about being a comedian, being someone who speaks openly in the current climate?
I'll be very honest. I've been extremely depressed. I'm even my stand-up comedy in Arabic. I try to avoid current news, and I just been depressed because, especially about the news about Gaza, cleaning up Gaza for Jordan and Egypt, when they called me, it's like they're gonna do it, because I called that out like a year and a half ago. And if anything that we've learned from the last year and a half, it says that America, pushed by Israel, manipulated by Israel, led by Israel, whatever you want to call it, can just do whatever they want. They went and took the Golan Heights from Syria. Nobody did anything. They're going into Jenin and going into the West Bank, killing everybody. They can bomb Gaza anytime they want. They can go and expel the Palestinians, and they can push the Arab countries to do it, and nobody will do anything.
Yeah. Oh. Also, Rubio's confirmed that he revoked the visa of the Tufts student and said he likely has revoked the visas of hundreds more. We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visas. The total number of revoked visas might be more than 300 at this point. The student had co-authored an opinion column on Gaza in the student newspaper. Rubio was asked what she did to merit her visa being revoked, but did not offer specifics to her case, only suggesting that his criteria goes beyond writing columns.
Support them. The argument will be that the individual is entitled to some type of due process, some type of way to contest this. I think that's going to be the core argument that we see here from the lawyer for this student.
In the article that she co-authored at the Tufts University student newspaper, she says, among other things, credible accusations against Israel include accounts of deliberate starvation and indiscriminate slaughter of Palestinian civilians and plausible genocide. Is that enough for the U.S. government now to say she should be kicked out?
Well, I think that'll raise another legal issue. I think another thing that we'll hear from the student's lawyer is that she's being singled out because of the content of her speech, because of statements like that she has made publicly. And I think the argument will be that that's a First Amendment violation. What I think we'll hear in response from the government, from DHS, is Congress drafted this law, they passed this law in 1952, and they meant to give the Secretary of State very broad discretion. And so the Secretary of State, in the argument of DHS, has the ability to determine that somebody's a national security threat, and that's that, and there's no further proceeding.
We've learned that Ozturk has been transferred to a detention.
Yeah, they disappeared an Iranian PhD student as well in Alabama.
Facility in Louisiana, despite a judge issuing an order for Ozturk not to leave the state of Massachusetts, where Tufts University is. Do we know?
They already moved her. They moved her to Louisiana expeditiously.
Ellie, when this order was given and whether the Department of Homeland Security may have intentionally defied the judge?
So that's the exact issue here, Wolf. And we saw a similar issue still playing out in the other case involving deportation of alleged Venezuelan gang members. The key question here is going to be timing. At the moment that federal judge gave the order, do not remove this person from Massachusetts, had she already been moved to Louisiana, if she had already been moved, then there's not going to be an issue regarding defiance. But if she was moved after that order was given, then we're going to need some serious answers here from DHS as to why that order was not followed.
Yeah, I'll give you the answer. They don't give a shit, okay? They don't care. They are deliberately violating court orders because either they're testing the boundaries of liberals right now, basically. They're testing the boundaries of those who care about the Constitution and those who are tasked with, like, the preservation of the integrity of our beloved sacred institutions, okay? What I mean by this is if you are real enough, you will make a big stink. No judge wants to have their name associated with a potential constitutional crisis. Even Baerbock is worried about this. No matter how conservative, no matter how liberal they are, there is a real fear associated with this. So they don't, because they fear that if a constitutional crisis takes place, or before a constitutional crisis takes place, like it goes up to the Supreme Court, then it's like a direct, it's over. Like they're going to rewrite the rules. Or if there's a constitutional crisis, they're going to be associated permanently with being the judge that triggered the constitutional crisis. Because if they actually put the institutions in its entirety, then it's over. Everything here, everything in our country right now is held together by confidence, okay? At the end of the day, the Constitution is a piece of paper. Everything here is held together through confidence. The idea that, like, the institutions, as long as we preserve them, as long as we preserve their legitimacy, we'll be able to stop before things get out of hand. This is a moment where things are getting out of hand, by the way. Things have already gotten out of hand. But I think a lot of people falsely assume that it'll just stop with, like, you know, these people. You know, they'll satiate their appetite. They'll quench their thirst for mass deportations by just, like, blackbagging a couple people that are irrelevant from their perspective, and it won't move beyond that. And then we can still act like these institutions are there and they're worth a damn. It's not. The Trump administration is pushing to make this a problem. That's where we're at right now. And I think, ironically enough, this is exactly how Nazi Germany rose to power, with liberals and you know, somewhat progressive-minded people thinking, no, as long as we just, like, hand it off, as long as we hand the power ourselves, then we can win it back inevitably with the institutions preserved, so we can then use those institutions in the end for prosecuting our agenda when we come back to power. What happens when you don't come back to power? Yeah. 50-year-old resident, a 50-year resident and green card holder being held in ICE detention in Tacoma. A woman who's lived in the United States for more than 50 years and is a green card holder is being held in ICE detention in Tacoma. Remember when I was in Japan and I talked about how the people that they're going after in the first batch, they're going to claim are violent criminals or whatever, but they're not going after violent criminals, and they're going to very quickly extend that. The violent criminal aspect of this is simply to get you on board, to get people who are oblivious on board with the processing, on board with the swift detention and deportations. But the reality of the matter is, if you are a person who has done a crime, regardless of your citizenship status, regardless of whether or not you are a documented or undocumented non-citizen, the American court systems obviously will still prosecute you. There is no world where someone goes, oh, dude, you're a Guatemalan migrant, but you've done like a severe felony. You've done a violent felony. Well, guess we can't prosecute you. You're free to go. Like, that's not how this works. But they made it seem as though that was how it worked by hiding this underlying premise that was what was going on under the Biden leadership. This is why I kept saying, like, if you do a crime on U.S. soil, you're going to get prosecuted for said crime. That's precisely the reason why there isn't like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of like violent criminals that are just like roaming the streets right now. You're fucking delusional if you think that. That's precisely the reason why the people that they're going to grab either from the prison system, so they have already been prosecuted, so that they can make it seem like they're deporting violent criminals, or they're going to grab people for erroneous claims and ridiculous things like trespass. You know what I mean? Oh, you have trespass on your you have a trespass arrest warrant on your record. You're gone. Doesn't matter if you were here for 20 fucking years. Yeah. Here's that demon, Tom Homan, trying to speak like a human about the tools in the toolbox.
I think it's going to open up a lot of eyes. I think illegal aliens, the most vulnerable, are not going to spend their life savings to hand it to a criminal cartel to come to the United States, knowing we end at catch and release. You're not going to be released in the United States. You're going to be deported immediately. And as the Secretary said, we got a lot of tools in the toolbox. El Salvador prison's one. We got Gitmo. We got other countries. So for those countries who push back on taking their criminal nationals back, we'll send them to another country. We got a lot of tools in this toolbox. Again, President Trump's a game changer. We got illegal immigration on board down 96% because of the policies of the Trump administration. And we got, let's say, record number of criminals. We still got a lot.
This is such a weird thing to do also, because like they're objectively making America an uninhabitable place to live, specifically to, make it so that like these scary brown people don't come here. It's like, dog, you're making white people fucking less safe, okay, as well. If your goal was to build a white supremacist, white nationalist utopia, yeah, guess what, dude? Nobody wants to fucking live here anymore. Not just like the Guatemalan migrants. They didn't do shit anyway. It's so fucking stupid. Yeah, you think Nazi Germany was great for the Volk, for the Volkish Germans? No, it wasn't.
A lot more to do in the interior, but we got the right team put together. This is the greatest team I've seen in my over 40 years serving as a special agent, a border patrol agent. I've never seen a team this serious about making this country safe. We got a great president. He's got a great team. So I wake up every day like a kid in the candy shop, getting ready to go to work. And I know we're making a difference every day.
Here's the last piece I'm going to cover on this issue specifically. Vince Warren, the director of the CCR, human rights lawyer, reacts to the detention of a Tufts University PhD student by ICE agents.
Encourage every one of your listeners to rewatch that video. It is shocking. It tugs at the hearts of what it means to be a person in this country. Here you have someone that is leaving, walking down the street, and she's accosted by people wearing hoods, people wearing masks that forcibly take her phone, take her backpack. She screams. In another video, you can hear one of the people who's filming saying, "What is this, a kidnapping?" And they're like, "No, we're the police." And the person says, "You don't look like the police." And they don't look like the police, and they're not acting like the police. This is the type of things that happens in authoritarian regimes all around the world. And in fact, it's the reason why for over 100 years, immigrants have been coming to this country, because they think this is the type of thing that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, ironic, but true. No, literally. This is part of the reason why I came to America. Like, what he's talking about right now is literally why I wanted to come to America when I was this young boy who thought about this place as like a nation of prosperity, you know? It's crazy. Like, ask any first generation migrant in this country right now, and he will tell you, like, yeah, dude, what the fuck is going on? This is like shit that I didn't want to face. Anyway, I'm gonna talk to Astead Herndon of the New York Times right now. I forgot that we were supposed to converse with one another earlier in the day, half an hour ago, but luckily he was able to join the call. And yeah, I'm going to talk to him right now about updates from his earlier pieces about how people were reacting to the Trump victory. Astead, can you hear me? Yes, I can. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, what's up? How are you?
I'm all right as one can be.
Yeah. I was listening to you talk about Homan and some of the other things. I think you're right to point out the broader strategy of kind of erasing civil protection. I interviewed Homan a couple years ago, and he's been planning this for years. And that's someone who's really serious about the broader effort of not just removing criminal unauthorized immigrants, but basically just changing the scope of the immigration system broadly.
Yeah. It's a dire situation that's ahead of us, and I think, or a dire situation that's happening right now, but I think that actually dovetails nicely into what I wanted to talk about, which is, of course, how are people reacting to this? Now, you have a piece, you do this podcast called The Run Up for the New York Times, where you interview regular Americans to the best of your ability, and that's what we were going to talk about today. Updates on that. So I'm very excited to have you.
We started calling back some of the people we met last year on the campaign trail as part of a process of bringing the show back. The episodes aren't out yet, and we're still going through the process, but we're already starting to see some things that really match up with some of the numbers. I mean, the biggest thing that came through is there is a sense of I think, of surprise of what we were hearing folks express, that they feel like Trump isn't focusing on some of the issues they thought he would. I think we were hearing from people particularly upset around tariffs and particularly upset around the role that Elon Musk kind of has, the co-presidency of it all. That came up a bunch. But the other thing that really came through, and this is not necessarily about Donald Trump, is the complete collapse of faith in the Democratic Party. Among the undecided voters we talked to already, maybe about 10, 15 of them, even the people who have not liked what Trump has done, still did not regret voting for him. And almost all of them said that their vote, that it wasn't a situation where they thought the Democrats would have been a preferable option. And so I definitely think that there's an emerging picture here of Trump as a figure who has a lot of leeway among the electorate to shake shit up, really. And I think that kind of premise is one that is actually really held. But the things that he has chosen to do that on, I think specifically the economic front and the risk of increased inflation or chaos driven by these tariffs, have really landed as people as not necessarily what they signed up for. But it's kind of different than some of the stuff we expect, honestly. There was a lot of leeway for him to focus on illegal immigration. I would bring up things like deportations and some of the things we've seen. And honestly, we saw people largely say they were okay with it. Now, I think it's partially a little different than what you were talking about. They don't really have a sense of where this might go in the future. But as of right now, because of the focus and the story they've been telling about criminal migrants and focusing on them, that has really latched on with some folks already. And so it's not really Ukraine or immigration. It was much more so Elon Musk as a person, as a figure, and also tariffs, really. And so, like, if we add up the parts of the America First agenda that weren't landing, it might not be what folks expect, but it does show this kind of shift in elector, which I think is part of the reason the White House is a little scared. I'm sure you saw today Elise Stefanik pulling back
Yeah.
her nomination for the UN ambassador. That's 100% because the White House is thinking about that congressional seat and the fact that they have really pissed off a group of people. And so are Democrats the vessel to seize on that right now? I'm not sure, but there is an opportunity partially because of the way that this White House has gone about fulfilling that mandate.
Yeah, the Elise Stefanik one is interesting. Definitely, there's like a lot of discontent, and I think one of the things that is probably too early for you to analyze is the Signal group chat situation, right? I think that has also caused a lot of discontent and a lot of chaos amongst like people who might have even been
Yeah.
Trump supporters in general.
That was happening on the day we were really calling people, and we heard it come up a couple times, but not necessarily in the kind of like Hillary email servers. And for sure, we'll see polling and stuff on this
Yeah.
as we talk to people more. But it was really just kind of like amateur hour example, and so people were referencing it as
Yeah.
a sign of the White House's kind of unseriousness. Now, if
Yeah.
that turns into something bigger later, I think we'll hear some of that more. But it was really just used as a sign that these are kind of folks who haven't taken the role in the office seriously. But people really have and I'm reminded of this every time we do these efforts. People really have a sense that they think they know Trump and they think they know him better than everyone else. And so oftentimes when you'll bring up something, and I was talking to someone and she was like, "Oh, well, Elon Musk will only be there for less than 6 months." And I was like, "How do you know that? What's informing you? What's they're like, well, I just don't think Donald Trump will keep him around if he becomes too much of a nuisance." Like people tell themselves a story
Yeah.
about Trump. And so it really insulates him oftentimes from some political consequences because people just block out the possibility of certain stuff happening.
Yeah. I think it's like weirdly parasocial. It's cultish in the old terminology to use, but it's very parasocial in the sense that like they have confidence in Trump as the utmost authority. So virtually everything he does, it's actually for the greater good, and maybe we simply don't understand it. I think that's always been Trump's weapon, though, because he is a great room reader, and he's been able to cultivate such a fan base by, one, taking advantage of the weaknesses of the Democratic Party in terms of both messaging and platform, and then also been able to show himself as a strong leader. I interviewed two people. I went to the Bernie rally in Nevada. I was invited there by their team, and I interviewed Bernie and AOC there as well. But outside of that, I also talked to two Uber drivers, one that was apolitical but right-wing, and the other that was apolitical but liberal, one Kamala voter and one Trump voter. And I think the Trump voter, basically podcast guy, operating on exactly the boundaries that you just referenced, talking about, all of the irrelevant things that podcasters have told him are very significant and that Trump is like taking serious action against. But what I think was really enlightening about the conversation that I had with the Kamala voter was that she was a black woman in Vegas, and they were both Tesla drivers. I don't know what that means, but and she was saying that she was basically saying like there's no, like, I didn't like the Democrats either, but I have a feeling of discontent. I have an overall feeling of unease, so much so that I'm actually planning with my husband to move out of the country to a more affordable place. Talking about potentially moving to Ghana or Thailand. Now, this is all TikTok related stuff that they've compiled this information randomly. But what was interesting about it? What was interesting about it was that she basically she was uneasy about Trump's actions, but she brought up the point that at least he is a go-getter, if that makes sense. And I think that is really important to recognize when we look at the approval ratings of Donald Trump. Even if he's doing something that's like inherently chaotic, he's still seen as a guy who is doing anything. Whereas And it goes back to the overall discontent that people have experienced and the overall lack of interest and trust that they place or faith that they place in the institutions because they haven't served them. So they look to Trump as a guy who, you know, they might not agree with his methods, but at least he's doing something, as opposed to the Democrats who are doing nothing, the do-nothing Democrats. And the reason why I brought this up is because of what you just presented as what people are paying attention to, right? On either side of the political spectrum. They're paying attention to the silliness. They're paying attention to maybe the tariffs, which will have dire economic backlash for the average American, or at least that's how it's being presented in the media overall. And they're not necessarily paying attention to the erosion of the First Amendment protections that are currently afforded to citizens and non-citizens alike, and also the Department of Homeland Security deportation processes that are grabbing random people. Now, I think tariffs are still important. I think Elon Musk undermining the administrative body is very important. Having said that, what they're doing on the other side that people are not paying attention to will have far more dire consequences in the long run, I think, or at least they work hand in hand with one another. The reason why they're not focusing on it, however, still goes back to the Democrats, because I think that there's a real crisis of leadership in the Democratic Party reflected by the attitude that these people you interviewed are demonstrating. But it's also because they are not directing their anger and resentment or directing the anger and resentment of the overall population to these issues, to these like severe violations of the constitutional protections. And they're dropping the ball in a spectacular fashion, because I think if more people were aware of these actions, the media would cover it more. If the Democrats made a big fuss about these sorts of things, as they have done about the tariffs, as they have done about, Elon Musk individually ruining the federal government, more people would be very, very worried, and they should be very worried. So I think both.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think what
you
you're
go
laying
ahead.
out here is a huge point. Like the things that people focus on from the administration are not necessarily the things that are part of the broader project of executive power that is the goal of this administration. Like when we talk about Project 2025, it's not just a random list of things. It is a cohesive view of how conservatives want to reshape executive authority in the federal government. And so sometimes it's very hard for me when I'm talking to folks because I know that, right? Like I know those things. I've been in those conservative spaces. And sometimes you will hear parts of the Republican Party articulate that vision, right? Like for a lot of those Republicans, they take a lot of pride in the fact that they have reshaped their party from being the George Bush Chamber of Commerce style to this sort of a version of Republicans. But that's not necessarily what people ingest from Donald Trump. And so you'll hear the silliness come up all the time. Gulf of Mexico, America, Canada, 51st state, Greenland type of stuff. But you're not hearing the necessary, or even, I think Doge is actually a great example of this because people's focus is on Elon Musk as a person and kind of the chaos generally. You know, one of the things we tried to do in a video I did for the Times a couple weeks ago was Doge is an effort that they are picking intentional legal fights because they have sat around and thought about ways that they want the presidents who have power to shape over those agencies. They have rewritten executive orders for the purposes of the legal fights to come. And so these are all intentional battles that they're picking.
Yeah.
And I think that part gets really lost in the mud. And I somewhat think it's certainly a media challenge. I would say Democrats also, but I really think like sometimes we talk over the Trump project. And if it's just like, an individual caught following this individual crazy guy, I think you miss the broader point. Because a big difference, I think, between him this time versus last time is the way in which he has brought a movement along with him that has a specific vision. And so this time around is much more about exacting that and reshaping. I always go back to kind of executive authority, but you're right about about deportations, about free speech rights. I think they're intentionally going to pick some fights with media about press freedom. They're going to there are goals that they have that are just inevitable over the next several years. And the other thing I think is important to say is like one time I ran this past a couple Trump people being like, there's some real risk of backlash here, right? Like tariffs are largely unpopular, like that type of stuff. And they really just aren't calibrating themselves for kind of political midpoint, you know? I think there is a sense that they have already experienced what it is when the government is all pointed fingers at them, or what happens when they lose the House in the midterms. And they're kind of trying to make it such, they're trying to change presidential authority such. So even if they lose some House seats, Congress is just generally more irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal of the next year and a half, the goal of the next couple years is about power in general and about a reshaping of government and culture that I think that I think they really don't even care what the political backlash is to that, because
And-
I think that goal is bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, by the way, is the Unitary Executive Committee process that was actually entertained and thought up of far before Donald Trump even, when Donald Trump was writing or taking out op-ed or full page New York Times ads talking about how we need to assassinate black teenagers in the Central Park Five or whatever. That even back then, the Republican think tanks were trying to figure out ways of undermining the legislative body and basically making the president a monarch. So this is quite literally an extension, maybe a logical conclusion of that. It's just Trump is the vehicle that will deliver this change to the American Constitution, it seems, or maybe someone that comes after.
And the first time he wasn't necessarily fit for that, because they were so surprised he won the primary and they were so surprised he won the race that it was just a reaction. Now, as he's been the unquestioned leader of Republican Party, him and the kind of heritage view that's been plotting this, you correctly to point out, since Reagan, right, have really linked up to meld their goal, to merge their goals. And so I really think that Trump experiencing those charges and his like retribution view allowed him to be a much better vessel for that kind of unitary executive theory, because for him it now works in terms of like power and exacting revenge from a set of enemies he thinks targeted him while he was out of office. But it really is a part of a longer project, and so it's hard even right now when people task like or even I think there's a lot of Democrats who are saying, how do we get this energy channeled? What should we do? Like, how do we, what's the electoral response to Trumpism right now? And I'm like, I know that there's certainly, I think public pushback matters, and I think we've seen that in certain instances. But what their bigger project is to really insulate themselves from public reaction, and to insulate themselves and insulate their policy goals from being responsive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I try to stress, talking to Bernie, talking to AOC, what I'm trying to get them on board with is like, my position, for example, on Israel and Palestine is obviously significantly different than the overwhelming majority, if not the entirety of Congress, including, but not limited to, the likes of Bernie Sanders and AOC. Having said that, the issue of going after student protesters and student activists without any sort of serious, without any sort of evidence whatsoever of like any sort of wrongdoing is not being done because these guys are truly terrified of, I think, students doing protests against Israel. Like, that's a secondary reason. The primary reason why they're using this issue is because they can use anti-Semitism and also pro-Israeli groups that play a formative role in the lobbying efforts against Democrats and Republicans alike to undermine constitutional protections for documented, undocumented, citizens and non-citizens alike, with the ultimate goal of eroding due process protections and eroding, search and seizure protections, and last but not least, eroding free speech protections. And I'm really worried that a lot of Americans are completely oblivious to this because they either don't care or because the Democrats themselves seemingly don't care enough about this stuff.
I think you're right that a lot of folks are focused on this. And there's a really tough part, even about the cycles that I live in my job, because the year after an election, you feel the electorate step back from politics, mostly. And so a lot of the things even we're doing now is partly because I want to keep a tighter check-in with some of these voters to see what is even cutting through to them and what isn't. And it's sometimes, to your point, it's very rarely going to be that kind of larger articulation of political power unless media does a little bit of a better job putting those pieces together. And I think politicians can use a bully pulpit to focus their efforts on that too.
Yeah.
But, when you mention kind of, even Palestine or other things, I mean, I think that there's just not been an acknowledgement that Democrats are on the wrong public opinion side on some of this stuff. And it comes up in these talks, right? Like when we ask people about the moments where their faith collapsed in the Democratic Party, people bring up immigration. People feel like the Biden administration did not listen to an inflation and immigration crisis kind of in 2021, 2022. People bring up Palestine, that they feel like the party represented a status quo in terms of specifically supporting foreign governments or feeling like, we're supporting, slaughter in over there. And then people also, I think, and this has been a new one, honestly, every single person we talk to mentioned trans women in sports. And I don't actually think that was that big of a deal 6 to 8 months ago. But it has clearly become a thing that folks have latched onto about ways to show the Democratic Party is out of touch. And so even when we talk about a couple of issues where they're just legitimately, I think, kind of flagrantly on the wrong side of public opinion, those become stand-ins for people to say, this is just politics as usual, and they're the kind of like Democrats of the same, they're just swapping out faces on the same thing we already know. And those are the times they have really brought that up. But I honestly got to think on a couple of these things, I don't think Republicans are wrong to say that Democrats are on the wrong side of a 70-30 issue when it comes to trans women in sports. Now, they could talk to the public about why and try to shift that public opinion, right? You can lead. Like your other option here, if you're not going to change your opinion, is to lead and to tell a story about why this matters and about what's important. So that's your other option. But they're not doing that, really. They're kind of sticking their heads in the sand. And as they've done that, the Republican Party, and specifically this last Trump campaign, has defined them around kind of, that the ad they spent the most money on, the she's for they, them, not for you. It worked. And so I would say like a big difference, and even my interactions with people, is they bring that up every single time.
Yeah.
And that was not true last year.
So that's a really interesting point, and I think it goes back to the same thing that you and I have talked about time and time again, which is that, and it's something that I brought forward to the Pod Johns when I had a conversation on Pod Save America as well, both before the election and after the election, which is that if you are undefinable by policies and if you're constantly focus group testing and you're letting the Republicans dominate the messaging landscape, then yeah, you're undefinable and your enemies, the Republicans, will be able to define you to whatever position that they want to define you by. And that is incredibly successful and is yet another example of complete capitulation to the Republicans being super damaging to the Democratic Party. They got crushed on the messaging front because they were policyless. This is twofold. The problem is twofold. One, there's no counter messaging. Two, there's no definable policy that you can attribute to the Democrats that are going to tangibly improve people's material realities. If the Democrats could be, like Bernie Sanders, associated with a couple key issues, then it would be virtually impossible to say, no, this is what they stand for. But because the Democrats don't stand for anything, and look, we follow politics fairly closely. I would say a lot closer than the average American citizen, right? And I can't tell you what the Democrats stand for. Can you?
They stand for Donald Trump is bad. I think they stand for institutions are good.
Yeah, that's what exactly.
I think to me it's like a vague defense of institutions. But to your point, and I think, Ezra Klein and a couple others have been talking more about this, but there needs to be a language of improving institutions that Democrats were not engaging in because they were defending these things that people weren't invested in. And I'm glad that you brought up Bernie because he's really someone who I think when you're out in the world, and as I've covered both of his presidential runs, it's a helpful person to use when you think about the Democratic Party's future, because the type of people you meet who are Bernie supporters in places like Iowa or others are never the type that you basically see online, right? Like they wouldn't even define themselves as progressives. They don't even think in an ideological lens. What they do understand is they think there's too much money in politics. They think that they think the establishment has not helped change come about. And so the things that he's associated with are what is actually allowing that authenticity to come through. But they're not really thinking in the left, right, left, center binary. And so I always am telling people, like, I would meet people on the trail. I remember this, particularly in the 2020 primary, who were torn between Bernie and Michael Bloomberg, right? And they would think in our ideological brain, those are at odds. But it wasn't, because it was two people who they felt like they understood what they believed in, and they had the trust in that. And I feel like when we talk about Democrats going forward, there's way too much focus on the individual policy position, like center, mid, and left. And I sometimes think that's driven by a centrist pundits and sometimes media who just want to punch at left. I'm like, the real thing I feel like I experience is a lack of authenticity and a lack of trust with voters that's not really driven by the calibration of ideology. It's about how you're communicating to them, and the fact that you really aren't playing in the things that people most care about. Like, a good example is, I hear about term limits all the time. I hear about people wanting to hear things about homelessness or how to fix, their education comes up all the time, right? There are things in which happen on the ground level that people just don't even play in on the politics level. And so I'm recalibrating that feels like much more of a useful exercise for the party over the next couple years to me than fighting over how to best perform Trump opposition at the State of the Union. I'm like, their problem is not whether you hold cards or not. And actually, in that one, I understand AOC not showing up at all. I understand Al Green showing up and yelling at him. I don't understand what they were doing in the middle,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that to me is always their
Or even coming
problem.
after Al Green, which was insane. They some Democrats actually criticized him as well for his actions. So it blew my mind, because what you're describing about key issues that people have anger around right now are also ones that they have come up with because of their individual experiences. They're not even being directed to be angry towards those sorts of things, right? This is without the Democratic Party leading them to get mad about specific issues like this. So that's free ball. That's free game for them to just pick up. So that's incompetence on a different level. My argument always is, obviously, under the existing duopoly, the counterbalance to the Republican messaging has to come from the Democrats that actually whip up support for certain issues in the same way that the Republicans have. Because it's not like the Republican Party has ever cared about an issue being really unpopular. I mean, look, no matter which way they can, they get that across for their most loyal fans, for the tapped in 30% evangelical white Christian base. They will deliver something that is unimaginably unpopular. The abortion rights being taken away, women's bodily autonomy being taken away. Democrats would never demonstrate political courage of that sort. That's not even a question. And I think that they need to do that significantly more frequently and be associated with key policies and constantly talk about how good they are. Because if they don't do that, then the space is flooded by Republicans simply lying to create just cause for the immigration enforcement actions that they're taking place, or misdirecting people's attentions back to the 49 trans athletes that were participating in NCAA competitions. Donald Trump signing an executive order surrounded by female athletes and making a big show of force is nothing but simple misdirection. If I were to remove the morality of transphobia versus protecting trans people, it is ironically no different than what the Democrats are being branded as. Silly people that only care about 0.1% of the population. Now, obviously, I'm saying I'm removing the morality because I think it is immoral to violate the civil liberties of trans people. But ultimately, it still plays the role of a distraction. When you focus on that, you think, oh, this person is doing something for me because I've heard over and over again that this is a major problem. And now I agree that this is a major problem because no one told me this is not a major problem at all. And the people that are ostensibly on the side of trans people are not doing anything for me at all. And even on the policy front, they're not doing anything for trans people. They're just aesthetically claiming that they care about trans people without actually ever doing any sort of serious protections for them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the other option is to stand up, right? Like
Yeah.
the other option is to do something. And so I'm like, if that when that's not taken, it makes no sense to me. But you're really right to point out the differences in where each party starts. Republicans force their moderates there to basically come along with it, or they will get rid of them. Whereas the Democrats work from the opposite premise. And I think it's also been different because Republicans have had much a bigger culture, particularly under Donald Trump, of fueling primary challenges, of ridding congressional members who do not follow the agenda, right? Like all I heard at Trump rallies over the last 2-3 years was not even anger at Democrats, was an anger that they felt Republicans stymied his first term. And so when they were coming back for a second term, they were going to put pressure on Republicans to
Oh, yeah.
follow through on the Trump agenda. That's not how Democrats talk, right? Like, and so like there is definitely a difference in terms of the political project of both of those sides. But I think it's really a macro kind of loss for Democrats. This, 24, they didn't just lose the election. Their theory of the case has collapsed, right? Like the establishment theory of the case over the last 8 years, since I think Obama, has really rested on a coalition of basically like identity politics that they felt could overwhelm everything else. That if the other side was regressive on a kind of cultural front, that they
Yeah.
could hold their side together, and that diversity, diversity is their strength, also overlapped with like a kind of demographic destiny argument. It's not true. And so all of
Yeah.
the things that it's just not true, right?
It's
And so
woke racism. It literally is
right,
like,
it
oh, these
really is.
Mexicans,
It's
these stupid
exactly, we
Mexicans
talked
will
about
vote
this
for
many
us.
times. Right, we talked about this time, but this is a flattening of all those identities. And so what they have on their hands is a legitimate challenge where they need to find something that cuts through. But when we talk about homelessness or education or things, they usually, in my opinion, avoid the issues that would make rich folks mad. And that is going to be a problem for them if they're also, because those are also the issues that combine the types of people they're losing. And so I really think right now they have a couple problems on their hands. They lost the stands after the election. They lost people who are deeply invested in the party because they felt as if they haven't stood up for them. But they can fix that, I think, over the next year or so or going into the midterms. There's a base problem that I think is much more about malaise, is much more about lack of vision, to your point, and is much more, I think, about a misalignment between the people who they take their incentives from, whether it be media or donors or who are that, and the disconnects among their base. And so one of the reasons I think they over-indexed on identity, on representation, is because frankly, that is a language that works for a certain class of people who
Yeah.
benefited from that. But that was never the language on the bottom. I was at George Floyd's memorial, right? They were not talking in that type of stuff, right? But
Yeah.
it was something that benefited certain groups of people. So they have I really think they have like a soul search that's going to take a little bit, because if they want to touch, education or homelessness or tech or AI, they might have to make somebody mad. They might have to stand for something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many of them want to.
Yeah, so therein lies also a structural hurdle for the current Democratic Party. The base being misaligned and their interests not being represented by the Democrats is to a certain degree intentional. I'm not saying that they're like controlled opposition, even though they kind of functionally are, considering that they serve the same corporate interests as the Republicans do. But the structural hurdle in terms of what you just mentioned, with Republicans saying we're going to primary people who are anti-Trump, is that Trump at the end of the day, regardless of the tariff stuff, is consolidating power, but not disrupting the pre-existing hierarchy where corporations are going to get massive tax breaks, right? So corporate bottom lines, corporate profit is still the number one thing that Trump wants to do. There might be a different vision of how to get there. There might be a different method of how to get there, but ultimately he's still very much in support of, the stock market always going up and corporations having record high profits year over year. And the issue is the Democrats also want that, and they can't shake themselves out of that, out of the 49-51% dynamic between corporate power, where it's like, okay, we have our woke billionaires and they have their reactionary billionaires, and when push comes to shove, it's obvious that the reactionary billionaires would much rather give in to the guy that's going to hand them the keys of the castle in the way that Donald Trump has. So seeing Hakeem Jeffries like run to Silicon Valley to give assurances to the remaining Silicon Valley tech CEOs that like we will give you also unfettered access was truly terrifying about the vision that the party has for its own future. Because yes, I think that they have to drop this thing and go full tilt left populist messaging. And that is going to cause a little bit of fissures within the party as it exists, but there is no other way out of this, because if they don't do that, then it's over. The party's over, democracy, or what remains of the theoretical democracy is over, and it's just all Republican authoritarian control all the way down from here on
By
out.
the time the Democrats get to the time where they can sort this out, which will be 2027, the country will be fundamentally changed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we will be in a different place. I think our political system will look differently. I think that what I believe in this administration, I believe their seriousness. I believe their willingness to test every end and push past it. And I think we are only in the first stages of that. And so the midterms did not solve this. Like, one thing I have learned in going through this a couple times, a disjointed Democratic Party can still have a good midterm elections. Like, midterms are usually individual races that are vessels about dissatisfaction and do not have to deal with a broader vision.
Or special elections, even worse than the midterms.
They have a hyper-engaged group of people.
Yeah.
There was a reason why Democrats were doing good in special elections under Biden, even though that was not translating to the top of the ticket. So there's a lot of ways that they can make kind of individual inroads over the next couple years. But what you're laying out, and I think I'm laying out, and what I think is their core problem, is a vision question, is a alignment question, is an authenticity question. Like, I think they simply have the type of messengers who aren't used to being truthful, to be real. I don't think they're used to really answering and standing on what they believe in.
Yeah.
Right. And so as someone who has been going at these, like going and asking about what is the core here? Why is, things are the way they are? I remember doing this with Harris, really trying to figure out what is the vision that tells you why problems are the way they are and what you would do to fix them. We did this at the DNC. We were like, what is the difference between a Kamala Harris-led party and a Joe Biden party? Like, is it substantive? And those answers really couldn't come. But I actually would say, to go back to the Gaza-Palestine point, at that time, they were showing more openness to having a different type of message or policy on that front. And that was part of the reason there, I do think there was that good vibe, right? And so I think as those things start to shift, and she sounds more and more like the current administration, is as that stuff dissipates. But there are litmus tests that people have about ways to show you're different than politics as usual. And so one thing I think is fundamental that what Donald Trump has done is introduced a different version of how politics can look. And so a lot of people have wanted that for a long time, even if you don't like what he's doing.
No,
and
he's
so I
fascist
think,
FDR. Like 100%.
Yeah, I'm like, and come in 2027, there is going to be a Democrat who tries to take that ethos and does something different with it. And I think that version is probably the one that wins out. Because I feel as if there is a palpable energy on the ground to rethink what liberalism is. I think there is a sense of failure from the party that's really pervasive. And we felt that last year as part of the reason Donald Trump won in the first place. The sense of like what has happened, and we did, Democrats telling us we did not send our best in 2024, and we're dealing with that. They kind of feel like they led Donald Trump back to the White House more so than he wanted. That's what's driving this. And so I just don't think that goes away, even if, they went back the House by a couple seats in a year.
Yeah, I do fear that they will learn no lessons and keep doing business as usual and consistently try
but
to.
What I'm saying is that they might actually just do the same thing. What I think is going to happen is an outsider is going to push them in 2 years. So
Hopefully.
The sentiment doesn't actually require an establishment seizing and understanding it. It just requires some type of figure emerging. And all I'm saying is like the ground is really ripe for that.
Yeah. No, I think that's precisely what Bernie is trying to do right now, because look, independent, democratic, socialist, whatever, doesn't matter. He still is a party man. Like, he has caucused with the Democrats in perpetuity for the 800 years that he's been in Senate and the 900 years that he's been
Particular
alive.
party man under Joe Biden. He really likes Joe Biden and
Yeah.
was a fairly deferential party member for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, it's not just these caucuses with Democrats, but specifically with Joe Biden's Democratic Party, he was a pretty loyal party member.
Yeah. And I think that was his, inevitably, that's where, like, I, as someone who has a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders, on that issue specifically, I find myself at odds with him, because I think he still believes that if he does all of these rallies, if he does, and you know, tens of thousands of people show up all around the country to these struggle sessions where everyone is talking about their issues and whatnot, that the Democrats will look to that and go, oh, we got to do that too. I think that is ultimately short-sighted in terms of if it's not, if all of that energy and all that momentum, I think, is not directly being funneled into issues that are currently undermining the American future, the preservation of the Constitution, things that Americans, if you ask them directly, would say they care about, certainly, but currently they're not aware of. If they don't actually move all of this organization and all these people that are, you know, getting agitated and supporting Bernie Sanders in that direction, I think it's going to be for nothing. And that's what I'm afraid of. That's what I worry about. Or spontaneously, we're just going to have people running for office that are those leaders that you're talking about. But I don't want to leave it up to chance.
Right, we'll see. Like, I thought 3 years ago that somebody would recognize that America thought Biden was like way too old to serve a second term. I was like, don't we all know this? But so I'm not necessarily believing that they're gonna like step up in some moment. But I guess I'm saying is, I think that right now, this is also a different community for Bernie than traditionally. Like, I think these are loyal Democrats who are looking for someone and who have come to him. And some of these people who I even have seen at these things were people who were pretty skeptical of him in his like original presidential runs. These are people who are capital D partisan Democrats who are looking for a channel in frustration. If I am a regular Democrat in Congress, that's the lesson I would take from that, was the Bernie's level of authentic messaging is actually really appreciated by a lot of questions of that base. I think that's a different group of people than the people who are basically ingesting Trump from afar right now.
No, that Bernie wins the primary. Like, those are the primary voters. Those are
exactly
the capital D
it's
Democrats.
Actually really interesting to me that in this moment he's gotten those people back, because those are the people who I will never forget. In the kind of I was covering Warren in 2020, and so many of her voters end up going to Biden and not to Bernie, and a lot of that was really about partisan identity. Was about their before they were progressive or left or whatever, that they were really Democrats, and that was their real comfort with Biden. It was a kind of traditional party politics.
Yeah.
So Bernie has like, I think, done himself good in this moment by speaking to that sentiment. It's going to require someone who can get those, who can speak in that language that brings, I call them the stands back, but also bring back the people who have stepped away, who are not, who I think it's much more about vision than the kind of expression of anger.
Yeah, no, this is like the most, in the most basic terms, this is exactly what I saw from the Pod Save America audience that were like shocked at what I was saying, because they were like, I agree with everything this guy is saying. How have I never heard this from CNN, MSNBC, or even Pod Save America? And what I simply was telling them is like, I want a fighter. Like, I hate the Republicans, and the Democrats don't sufficiently hate the Republicans. They want to be Republicans. I think that's despicable. It's the proximity to the Republicans in terms of attitude, policy, and politics. Well, not politics, but policy that frustrates me. And I think there are a lot of people that want that. A lot of people want Democrats to actually fight. And hopefully,
they've really latched themselves kind of Lincoln Project, become codependent. But if I'm gotten on that relationship, not a huge one, in my opinion, and this election was, I think they drive the kind of like most engaged people, whatever. But if the premise was that you were going to win over a sufficient amount of like traditional Republicans or institutionalists, that was what 2024's entire premise was from Biden-Harris Democratic establishment, was that the kind of coalition of the normal, right? I'm like, they have not proven to be, I mean, at minimum, they're not the vessels to reach those people, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, I really don't understand where that type of relationship goes. But their kind of codependence is really important, I think, because it's, I think, really encouraged Democrats to keep leftist kind of populist politics at a distance, right? They were making an alliance on another sort.
Yeah.
And so those are the type of relationships that I think are going to be very interesting going forward. It's because I do think they've got into this kind of unholy alliance with all of these Trump fleeing Republicans, but it hasn't necessarily, and bringing themselves closer to them, they've gotten themselves, I think, a little further from their base, or at least are not asking them the type of questions that are going to get them closer to their base.
Absolutely.
And so what they do on that front is part of my interest over the next several years. But to your point, like there's not like a leader doing that, right? There's not a place for that to happen right now. And so that's why it's so kind of chaotic, choose your fighter. It's because there's not a centralized person or vision or think tank or something they're working from. I tweeted a couple weeks ago, where's the Liberal Project 2025, right? I'm like, where is actually the version of the Heritage Foundation for Democrats?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that abundance? Is that Ezra?
I was
just
just about to say, I didn't know, that's your boy. All right. But I was going to bring that up. That was going to be my final question for you.
That's what I was asking before, but like now, I mean, I'm halfway through it. I mean, and I'm thinking like, oh, I think this might be it.
But I feel like that is the same calculated academic language that comes across cold and disingenuous. And it's a reskinned version of like deregulatory politics or deregulatory policies and a public-private partnership. Like, let the markets finally, let the markets do its thing is not going to get us across the finish line, especially when the way that you are presenting this is still, no disrespect to Ezra, I think his beard looks great, but a bunch of nerds, okay? Like, they're, like, the average American sees him and he's...
Right? Ezra's job is to think, right? And so I think that that's fine, right? But in the way that has to work in politics, it needs a messenger. And I think one of the things in which, what I would claim is like an abundance kind of Warren-y lane of liberals have not had is an ability to translate that message to a broader audience. And one, I would say, some of those kind of, I don't mean this about him because I don't think he's actually like this, but some of those nerds haven't wanted to translate that message, right?
Yeah.
And there's been actually a kind of haughtiness around it.
Yeah,
too.
it's smug. It's elitist. It is exactly what...
I'm like, I would say this all the time to some folks. I'm like, and I say this even, I would say that I include some leftists in this too. Like, if your message of defund, for example, this is an obvious one. Like, if I'm in Black communities and you haven't convinced anybody, if I'm in these if I'm in the places that are experiencing the brunt of police violence and nobody here agrees with you, that is an organizing problem. Like, that is a problem that's completely independent of media, that's completely independent of Republicans on the other side. It feels to me as if some of that was not a desire to go to those people and feel like they are worthy of hearing that case. Right?
Or look, it's the abolition argument as well. Like, I understand the morality behind abolition, and I understand that, like, many activists, if you talk to them, many anarchists, if you talk to them, are actually incredibly reasonable on this issue, where they're not actually saying like no more laws or no more like regulatory force. They just want to democratize the process better so that like the outcomes actually protect and serve the broader public. So on the messaging front, on the messaging agenda, yes, there is a lot of like, on the left, I wouldn't say it's more so a problem with like academic language, but more so about moral purity and presenting yourself as like morally pure. On the neoliberal side, it certainly is. You're muted, by the way. You muted yourself.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. It's academic.
Yeah, it's this like academic language. Ultimately, I think, like I said, it still goes back to the structural hurdles when like the left is despised by both the liberals within the Democratic Party, and that much we have also seen in the way that like other people are now being moved into the left camp. Like when you're criticizing Indivisible and like, other like Democratic Party funnel groups that are there to organize, door knock for you, fundraise for you. If you're calling them the Sunrise Movement, if you're comparing them to like a bunch of, socialist Marxist radicals that demand too much, go yell at the Republicans, like, you've lost it. Like you've lost the plot in its entirety. You have no organizational capability, and you have no interest in actually organizing at all. And so I think
actually, I would say like that's a big lesson I took from the last couple years, and I remember us talking about it too. Was like remove policy, remove even politics. There is a process problem among the Democratic Party where they're not actually used to being in conversation with their voters, and so I actually found a lot of the politicians to be uncomfortable with a legitimate expression of democracy, as I would say, of people actually pushing back and thinking of their jobs
Yeah.
as having to hear that. Because one
Yeah.
thing I would always be like is if you had, to the point of indivisible or something. I'm like, if you were someone over the last couple years who weren't engaging with the fact of how Americans felt about Biden, you were head in sand. What were you as a politician
Oh, yeah.
outside? Like you could not tell me your constituents did not bring it up. You could not tell me that. I know that's true. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, some of it is actually because the party had talked so much about, duty to the president, and they would not talk about duty to their own voters. They didn't even see their own job as being reactive to those voters. And so I'm like, some of what you're talking about here
Yes.
is like not even just the people involved or even the policies that they choose, but that there is a process problem among partisan politics where I would actually say Republicans at this point under Trump are much more used to interacting with their base and the uncomforts of that than Democrats are.
Oh, yeah.
And so some of that is literally, I think some of that indivisible uncomfort is because I think particularly congressional Democrats aren't used to being held accountable by their own voters.
Oh yeah, no, this is. I mean, and it is reflected in the like high informational voter cycle. Democrats for years have trained their most loyal partisans into saying democracy is not important. These public servants are not accountable to the public.
Like lurk around stuff. I mean, Stephen A's doing his crazy LeBron thing now, but before that, he was on, he was on The View talking about all that
Yeah.
type of stuff, right? Like, I think there is a growing type of person who is acknowledging that because I find 2024 to be indefensible. Like, the route to how they got there, I don't think a person in good faith can really defend that as a working party.
Yeah.
So whether it's message, whether it's the individual politician, or whether it's process, it's definitely something. Like something led to that disaster.
No, absolutely. Well, Astead, thank you so much for coming on. Once again, always a pleasure to have you on. Is there anything you want to promote before we let you go?
Our new episodes are coming out in the next couple weeks. They will be running on the daily and the run up feed. And I will also be doing some videos of the Times, doing some politics explainers about what to focus on during Trump. I think there's way too much news right now. I think you have to know when you cut through the noise. And so I'm trying to make up like a series of things of being like, okay, what are the terms we need to know? What are the things that you should know to understand the kind of broader project that we were talking about at the beginning? Because I feel like, that kind of targeted understanding of this administration will last a lot more than, getting the deluge of news that comes at us every day. So when you see it, share it, check it out, and tell the Times you want more of them.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Astead. Have a good one, man. All right, that was Astead Herndon of the New York Times, one of my favorite recurring guests on the show. Hopefully that was an enlightening conversation. Astead, of course, is not reflective of the broader base of media in general. So do not mistake yourselves into thinking, do not delude yourselves into thinking, well, a lot of journalists are on the ball and on the money. No. By definition, his job requires him to go out and talk to people and not stay within the DC blob, not stay within the DMV zone. And that is precisely the reason why he has these sorts of opinions and is broadly reflective of the values that you present in this community and what you've grown accustomed to. So remember that. But that's also part of the reason why I always say there are still fantastic journalists out there, and they're incredibly valuable. They're an unimaginably valuable resource, even at outlets such as the New York Times and many other places, despite the fact that on issues like Israel-Palestine, obviously they have dropped the ball spectacularly, and not even dropped the ball, but like actively harm and do appeals to more genocide. So going back to the conversation that was taking place beforehand, this is the last thing I wanted to show you. Vincent Warren being interviewed by Christiane Amanpour on CNN, the executive director for the Center for Constitutional Rights. talking specifically about the Turkish PhD student that was kidnapped by ICE agents and expeditiously shipped over to Louisiana to a favorable judge for subsequent deportation. Okay. This is the last video I'm going to show you on this matter before moving on to some other news stories.
Damn, this guy's good.